Yeah, of course it's hard. Of course you're not sleeping well. Of course you're crying every day. Like, you're going through a hard thing, you know? Like, to expect something different, I would probably be more concerned, you know, when somebody is just able to kind of, like, keep powering through, but then can rattle off, like, 5, you know, very stressful, significant life changes. I mean, that's, like, big. That's important to pay attention to. I think, you know, culturally we value or give a lot of like praise to being able to kind of like power through and buckle up and not listen to yourself or not listen to signs that you're struggling. But like, that is harmful. That is hard, you know? And I think that being open to that probably starts with, or open to something different probably starts with just validating, like, of course you're freaking out. You just described something that is big, you know?
I Am Consciously Curious, a podcast for those that are searching for meaning and fulfillment in their lives. My name is Victor Chan, and I'm on a mission to find out why people do what they do. I've interviewed white-collar to blue-collar, entrepreneurs to passion projects, and life is just too short to not produce meaningful work. Thanks for tuning in. We're live, everyone. We got Steph Krim from Good Things Vending back on.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
Yeah, thanks for introducing us and organizing this to Holley from SHFT.
Shift Behavioral Health.
SHFT Behavioral Health. Missing an eye, but we can get into that later.
Super cool without it.
Don't need it.
Yeah, don't need it. Yeah.
You are the eye. I'm the eye.
Wow.
We're all the eye.
Oh,
That's beautiful. That's good.
So co-founder and chief clinical officer
It's true.
is the official title.
Yeah, super official.
But you've had a few lives prior.
Couple hundred
Hundred lives.
That's what it feels like.
For anyone, or to lay some foundation about who we have on the mics, and to me, can you share how, when your paths have crossed, and it seemed like you've been kindred spirits for a very long time, where take us to the beginning.
Yeah, totally. I first met Holley through hospitality.
Oh.
We shared community, sort of finding each other in the same space. Sort of a bit of that thing where you meet somebody and then you don't see them and then you meet them again a while later and then you don't and then you meet them again. And by the time that you've met for the third time, you're like old friends because you've been in enough.
Was there ever intentionality behind the 3 times?
Not in the original run.
Or just
but then,
serendipity?
I think the most recent coming back together, you know, I'd gone through a lot of changes in my life. Holley'd gone through a lot of changes in her life. And when we came back together, we found that just where we were at synced up. And, you know, I'd spent a long time working on Good Things Vending. And she sort of brought this conversation that reminded me of how exciting it was to build something and how scary it was to build something. And I just like watched her put her head down and try and like will into life a thing that doesn't really exist, built on like vision and care and community. And, you know, hard to not sort of fall in love with a person when they're doing that kind of thing in front of you. So for me, that's where it came from, was just...
Okay. So the most recent iteration, is it more of a sounding board or providing advice? And
we also both have kiddos around the same age.
Okay.
So I think in a lot of ways, it's like hard to have adult friends, hard to make adult friends. And that, especially when you're going for something, whether it's parenting, a thing you're trying to learn, a way you're trying to grow, and to find somebody who syncs up in more than one area, who's interested in engaging in conversations around that growth and around that building, and they have a different perspective, but one that has enough crossover. I think for me, it feels like we were meant to, we sort of, the 3 priming meets or the all of the times before.
This,
they were sort of to set us up for this moment when we were really supposed to be like locking in and building a friendship that feels really familial.
Okay.
You know?
Does that resonate, Holley?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think when I first met Steph, like you said, we were just in different places, but I feel like immediately I was like, I like you. I don't know you, but I feel like I know you. And then when we came back together, it just felt like it really made sense. And I think like professionally, you know, connecting, and then as mom people connecting, and we just like really vibe, you know.
I think Holley's a very safe person who chooses to do really scary, hard things. And for me, I admire that in anybody.
Yeah.
You know, and I think she really lets it be out there. She really like puts it in front of her and sort of allows people to see it and allows things to grow from it. And I mean, I move with a lot of admiration in our friendship.
Which is kind of opposite to what a lot of like books tell you to do, is to like keep it secret until it's real. but then you toe the line between manifesting it and putting it out there, and it creates some accountability, but also it extends a hand to anyone willing to help you.
Yeah. I think if you need community, the earlier
the better.
You can like safely bring people in, the better, I think.
Okay.
I get the need to protect things, but I think that feels a little bit more
protect it, but also not be all talk either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind being all talk. I don't mind being all talk.
Steph's a good talker.
Be all talk until you do something. You know, it's such a fine line.
Yeah.
Like maybe you got to talk for a couple years before you make the thing happen. Be all talk.
Sure. I guess for anyone that is familiar with your work, Steph, can you kind of catch us up to speed with Good Things Vending? Yeah.
Started a business where we take full-size snack vending machines and stock them with local art and vintage and nostalgia items. We got 10 now. Most recent collaboration was with the CTA. Slow, I like moving slow, like mom life stuff and life stuff. Being a person is a full-time job.
But with that, I'm sure you've experienced this. When things move, sometimes they move really fast.
Yeah. And I think when they move really fast, it's been interesting to learn that sometimes it's your job to push, and sometimes it's also your job to like slow the roll a little bit. For me, at least.
Which reminds me of Travis from Chomp Pizza, also operating a pizza slice shop out of the 18th
I haven't
Pink
been
Line.
yet, but I need you to know.
$5 a slice on a paper plate.
I want you to know that I have looked up the location.
It's like right here.
So many times because I'm like, am I close? Is this the time? Like, is it going to happen? Yeah, it might be today. Today might be the day. Yeah.
You do it.
Yeah.
And so Holley, when was the seed planted for Shift?
Oh man, I think I had thoughts, making observations just about the world and like gaps that existed for a while. I mean, when I think about like my own life and how it kind of is informing a lot of what I'm doing, I know that I've relied a lot on community and the people around me for support. And I think in working with people in healthcare and mental health and seeing the spaces that are supportive and aren't super supportive and how they're attuned to people's needs, it just kind of has come to me over time. I mean, definitely working in an emergency department during the pandemic became sort of abundantly clear that people are seeking something that wasn't quite out there, going to the emergency department for an urgent need for them, but just super misaligned with what that space is really for. And I'm sure just like in your, a lot of your professional work, you've seen that just the ER being a sort of primary care space. But I've worked, on the west side of the city, on the south side of the city, downtown, and those needs are universal regardless of like what community people are coming from or, just their circumstances. So I think that that's really resonated with me over time for sure.
And so did you realize that the solutions to these issues or chief complaints that patients were having were not necessarily found or developed inside an ER? And the root cause was outside of a hospital system?
Definitely. I mean, everybody is showing up, with a lot of stuff, a lot of life stuff, like generations of life stuff, and some issues more pressing than others, but ultimately everybody's showing up like really with an itch to speak to somebody who can support them and meet them where they're at and figure out how to move forward. And I think that environment often is like not the best equipped to do that with the sort of like, I don't know, time and like patience. It's just not for that.
There's no bandwidth for that.
Yeah, not a whole lot of bandwidth. Yeah.
Why does it feel like this current generation is so in tune with their selves and their mental health and the ability to express the need for help? And I'm sure previous generations had these issues, but for some reason, maybe we're not as expressive about it.
I think that people often turn inwards, and I think that there is a lot of power in that reflection and then being able to like give a voice to the things that are going on the inside. That's a really good question, though. I think that there's a lot more comfort with being vulnerable, being open, speaking up when you need something, I think has just become more common for people. And as people are more open with their own stuff, I think it lends itself to others kind of jumping in and saying, like, this is where I'm at. I think modeling that is really powerful. That's something that I definitely try to do, like just say the stuff and kind of lead in that way. I think there's just an openness because also, I think a lot comes from learning that being closed off is really tough, like having parents, having people in your family or in your communities that are more closed off. I think it lends itself also to people doing the opposite of that, in building a sense of community and connection.
Yeah, to just muscle your way through it.
We talked about this a while back about how also we were raised by a generation of people who were raised during wartime. So there's like you're like sort of not allowed to have emotions. And then that generation is raised by a generation who wasn't really allowed to have emotions, but without as much sort of social purpose to it. It just was the way that things were. I feel like now there's this ability for us to question that, and then for the generation after us to sort of it just opens things up.
It's so interesting. I wonder if there's a universal truth to a sense of fulfillment. So like if the previous generation was on their deathbed, and let's say that was someone that was not as open or did not give themselves the self-inquiry into their well-being, I wonder if they would die saying that they were fulfilled, or if they left anything on the table or had any regrets.
I mean, I wonder in working with people who are all coming in different places with different experiences, with different needs that you're attempting to meet in one space. Do you find that same disparity exists? Do you find that same disparity exists in the way that people deal with stuff now?
I'm distracted.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that mine? I hope it's not mine.
It might be mine.
If it's mine, I'm sorry.
If it's mine, I'm sorry.
If it's Victor's, neither of us are sorry.
Yeah, Victor. Oh
Okay,
no.
So Holly's sorry. Holly's the one that's sorry.
It must be important.
Yeah.
So super important.
I think that, I guess what I'm trying to gauge is like, do you experience, because like when you ask that question, it makes me think about just difference, like different people have different capacities for sort of emotional connection or connecting with themselves in that way. Is that something that you have to face when people come in? Are you having to gauge, okay, are you somebody that has a high capacity or like, yeah?
I think so. I mean, there's something about people seeking care, like the people who are coming to us often have a little bit of curiosity, and I think that is making it easier for them to come through the door, which I think that it's kind of like they're self-selecting, they're opting in already. But I do think that there's this sort of skepticism around what we're trying to do, if the space will really kind of shine as unique, if it will meet a need that maybe they haven't been able to have met before, and there's like a treading carefully. But I do think that the physical environment kind of offers up the reassurance that this will be a different experience for people who maybe have been more guarded or have had like really challenging experiences in healthcare and mental health, walking into spaces that can feel lonely and scary and triggering and harmful sometimes. So I think we really try to like set the tone both with how we're inviting people in, with that openness, with that reassurance. I think that it lands that way.
That's so interesting. So do you feel like the mental health resources we have locally in the city are underutilized or well utilized?
Man, I think a little bit of both, honestly. I find that I think about this a lot because I don't know if you all are familiar with like Psychology Today, that platform. It's basically like a old school, it's like, reminds me of like the white pages or yellow pages where mental health providers have their profiles, but it's kind of tough because I think, we know that there's so much demand for support and people, posting online saying like, I'm looking for a therapist for this or
it's
going
like
to their,
dating.
Yeah, and so there's definitely the demand, but I do think that there's this mismatch or there's kind of like there's not like fluid channels where people can reach support. I don't know. I mean, the market for mental health companies and certainly for just like providers is so saturated, I think, with a lot of people doing really incredible things, but then you hear about people who can't find services. So I don't totally know like how to make sense of that, but I do think that there's not like a clear through way for people to be able to raise their hand and say, I'm looking for this, and then identify somebody who can meet that need with a sort of ease,
So for your demographic, are they in school? Are they like, who are they talking to initially? Like, who's their first point of contact?
Yeah. I mean, it could be anybody, honestly. We see, referrals from school counselors, from therapists who are like looking for support, maybe for clients who have more significant or acute needs or kind of treading towards, some more instability or concern about safety. I mean, it could be from emergency departments who are looking to kind of like divert some of that volume that we talked about for people who need something now, but like really do not need to sit in a waiting room, be triaged along with, any other medical complaint that's going on. And just like some word of mouth of people saying like, I've heard that this exists, and for a while I've looked for something different. I've been through the process of trying to seek care and it's been kind of convoluted or stressful for me. Like, I'm curious about something different, something new.
Yeah. So it's in addition to the age, am I hearing this right when in a previous interview you said as young as 5?
Mm-hmm. As young as 5. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, our team, I would say specializes in ages like 10 to 30-ish, but because we are kind of a catch-all, I mean, as an urgent care, we have, right now we have people in our care as young as 8, and then we have somebody who's 66, which is just really cool, I think, to see that range. And, people come through us, and if we're referring out, we do that, but we're also supporting people, with their needs regardless of that age point.
So it's not just young adults?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So is young, okay. And then in addition to the age, the acuity or the variety of different levels of care could be as acute to how long do you think you'd be working with a patient? Yeah,
I mean, we have people, so a couple of our, one of our services that I'm really excited about is a chat. It's basically just like a one-off therapy session, and we kind of position it as like a blow dry bar for therapy, or like a drop-in space. We've had somebody come in and be like, I just need to talk through some stuff, like a workplace stress thing. I have a meeting coming up at 1. Can I just like walk through what I'm thinking about doing? Or, I think the goal with that is like, how can we make it as emotionally accessible as possible for people to drop in and get advice? Like the number of times in my life where I've said like, I just need to vent to somebody who's like a neutral outside party. I mean, the bonus is that it's with a therapist, so of course we're going to be, a little bit more informed clinically, but like a drop-in space for that kind of support. And for that, we see a lot of, just like you and me, people who just are stressed or going through a breakup or have a falling out with a best friend, and they're like, I just need to cry. Can I like come in? I've had people say like, can I just come in and like sit for a while? And it does kind of function as a third space in that way. And then we definitely have people who need more ongoing, support if they are a little bit higher risk, or they need, more weekly sessions for therapy or whatever the case may be.
Is it offered online as well for those chats? Okay.
Yeah, we do a crisis evaluation. So, offering like a safe alternative to the emergency department for mental health concerns. Yeah. And those are only in person, just given the safety component. But yeah.
I mean, what we're relaying to our students is do they have any suicidal ideations or homicidal ideations? And if someone were to find out that their friend, who they are not next to at that time, is it okay to call 988 or 911 so there's like a wellness check or well-being check on that person?
Yeah, absolutely. You're just saying like out in the world, if somebody's trying to figure out. Yeah, I mean, I think that any way to get support in front of somebody is great. I know 988 does a really awesome job. They have like a mobile response team, and it's regardless of like insurance or ability to pay, and they'll send somebody out to the home or in the community, which is an incredible resource.
Is that the CARES team?
No, it's actually different from CARES. CARES is great, but it's a very similar model. And that just offers like that real in-person, real-time support for somebody like on site, which is amazing.
If can you elaborate on CARES? Is CARES through 911 then?
So CARES is through no, CARES is separate from 911.
It's from the mayor's office, I believe.
It is from it's funded through the mayor's office, and it basically offers support for, I believe it's 21 and under is the age. If somebody is has insurance with Medicaid or Medicaid managed care group, and it basically sends out an individual like myself. I worked for C4 SAS for a little bit for that agency to do an assessment with somebody to kind of see like where they're falling, what the safety concerns look like, what risks could be, and then what level of care essentially they might need. And if they need to be seen in an ER, then they would triage that, and if not, then they get them set up with services.
Okay. Yeah, through that initial interview, it's like, how do you vet that your personal, as the provider's safety is going to be met? Unfortunately, last summer, one of our students was stabbed on one of the ride-alongs. The quick story is they get dispatched to an apartment complex for the suicidal patient, and the the therapist was the one that called, and she said that this is like the 6th time this month, and that their cries for help is the only way that they get any attention. So sad all around. And when they got up to the unit, the patient eventually locked herself in the bathroom, and the lead paramedic was able to coach her out. And this whole time being in the bathroom, she insinuated that she was ingesting bleach and pills. And when she came out, she spit bleach on the paramedics, ran towards the kitchen and grabbed a knife, and the medic pinned her against the wall. But after she got her arm free, she started swiping around, and they made the decision to leave the apartment. And our student, who is 6 foot something, 30 years old, and is a personal trainer, tripped on a rug, fell to the ground, and the patient threw a knife, and it made contact with his back. And it wasn't until he made it down to the ambulance and he realized, like, he was like,
holy cow,
there's blood in my back, and like, I don't think there should be blood, this much blood. And they were like, there shouldn't be any blood coming from your back. And so then I hear about it from a field chief about, a student being potentially in an incident. Don't know the details. You should make your way to Cook County.
Jeez Louise.
Oh, it's never happened. Nothing like that has ever happened. And when I got there, the student was not in his bay. He was getting a CT scan of his back. I get the rundown from police, and then he comes back smiling and happy, and he's like, "What's up, Vic?"
Stop.
And this was after I made the call to his wife.
He's like,
and
hey,
she's
I'm
out of
good.
town. She just left. She just knew that he was going on a ride along.
You're like
that day.
unwell, and he's like, "How's it going?"
Yeah, he's like,
"You're
let's
around."
Can you FaceTime your wife right
Pizza.
You needed shift. Yeah, he was doing okay.
Oh my gosh.
That's so wild. It's such a
So how do you
vulnerable
to
thing,
ensure, there's there's a lot at stake potentially. And I know like these resources are trying to combat the stigma of having police on scene and the stigma of just only further inflaming a situation.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like, it's tough.
It is hard. I mean, you definitely want to go with like the least triggering presence, and also you want to err on the side of caution, and I do think that those teams that have kind of like a dual purpose or dual role, of somebody who is leaning more like clinical clinician as much as possible with somebody for that added layer of support is like the sweet spot. But I mean, I think for a number of reasons that's hard to get that resource situation worked out,
Okay.
Yeah.
So what were some of the calls that you were dispatched to when you worked for C4?
Oh, so C4, I just did like home visits and school visits. And, we had a lot of like younger children who maybe reported to their school counselor they were feeling unsafe, or even to mom or dad saying like, I don't feel like I can, keep myself from cutting or something. And so there's definitely that urgency where we needed to figure out, okay, can you maintain safety in the home like with some adequate supervision, or do we really need to explore, going to the ER, thinking about a higher level of care, whether that's intensive programming or inpatient admission sometimes.
Is this conversation with the patient or with their...
With both for a minor. We would kind of split them up.
Yeah.
I mean, we really want to have time with the student or the young person to figure out like what is going on, what are the real concerns, and certainly there are instances where they would only feel comfortable disclosing that to a provider, right, with mom or dad or whoever there. I think it can sometimes hinder like a willingness, and so we would kind of do what we needed to get that info from them.
Yeah, and then toe the line between like at what point do you have to actually involve parents?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's so tough.
as somebody that you both are coming from a background that has a little bit more info about kind of like these processes, I'm wondering, as somebody who's like a real outsider, you talked about the gaps that exist in the system. What's the normal way that something like that would be handled if programs like this didn't exist? What's that missing piece? What doesn't get attended to, and like how did that show up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, CARES has been around for a long time. So, I mean, that's certainly filling a need. But generally, if there's a concern about safety and it's like mental health related, a lot of those times those concerns go to, who are the main supports or points of contact in like a family's life. I think most often it's a pediatrician, and I think that that can kind of create a bottleneck where there's some, practices or clinics that have like in-house mental health support. They might have a social worker to attend to those needs, but a lot of times it's kind of the clinical team, like the medical clinical team, that's kind of like, okay, here are the resources we have. And if there are not resources available in that moment, then a lot of times those kids get sent to the ER, you know, and we would evaluate a lot of them and think like, oh my gosh, I don't know that you really need to be here, but it makes sense that you would be here because, you know, you want to make sure that you're keeping safety top of mind. And so that just ends with an ER visit. I mean, it's imperfect.
Oh, yeah. I guess I haven't really thought about it like that. So, like, at the beginning of most people's EMT journeys, like, they start on an inter-facility ambulance. So these ambulances are transporting patients between facilities. So sometimes hospital to hospital, hospital to behavioral health, nursing home to doctor's appointment, hospital discharge back home.
Like why? Just because they're like,
why? Because
it's part of the
like
system is that they get moved through.
Yeah, different levels of care, insurance reasons,
different practice, different people at different spaces.
Okay. Not every hospital is equal to each other,
Yeah.
and then insurances are accepted at different places.
Okay.
Are my main two understandings. Would you say?
I would agree. Yeah, or just I mean, I guess you would definitely be able to speak to like the routes that paramedics would take, but I feel like I've seen so many times where maybe a family would say like, can we actually go to this other facility that we're more familiar with or who has seen us before? And it's like, sorry, our job is to get you to like the closest place, you know, not always, but I think like that is the goal of transport. And so,
so CFD would take you to the closest hospital.
Okay. And then there's like an internal structure where people are that's what you get put on first.
Yeah. Like not every hospital has mental health.
Yeah.
Right. But we've always had it from the perspective of, from IFT, is like this person has been here for 24 hours and they need to now be transported to a higher level of care.
Yeah.
They're going to get inpatient treatment at a mental health facility.
Okay.
I rarely think about the patients that don't need mental health facility. Like they were there, like that was their chief complaint in the ER, but the physician or the social worker has deemed it like, actually you don't need
what do you do from there?
Further care. And so like I wonder what was their initial complaint that wasn't worthy enough of like a full-on is the average stay like 7 days, like a week?
Inpatient, it could be anywhere from like 5 to 10 days, I would say loosely. Okay. But I think, you know, I've always been kind of intrigued by like somebody or a family's like ability to kind of gauge like, what do I need? This feels like a lot. I know I can't manage it at home. Like teachers are doing what they can, but we still have this stuff coming up and it's scary, most importantly, right? Like a mom is like, I'm just trying to make sure that my kid's okay. And I know what I know, and there's a lot that I don't know about how to manage the situation. So they go to the ER, you know, and it could be that somebody's saying like, I don't want to live anymore. It could be, you know, concerning, but kind of vague language where it's like, well, that's definitely a flag. You know, you want to do something about it. But then when you're in that environment where there's really, you know, a scale by which we're triaging cases and like, you know, somebody who might be more passively suicidal is evaluated, but a lot of times like when we would see them, we would say like, okay, we can kind of patch you up in a way that makes the most sense, you know, make sure that you have a safety plan, make sure we're making treatment recommendations, but ultimately you're good to go home. Those are kind of the people that I feel like really, and once they've been through that process several times and they're like, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to go to the ER. I'm going to be seen. I'm going to be waiting for X number of hours. You know, I get discharged.
So these are individuals that want more care. Are they then disappointed by being discharged from the ER? Because like at that point, if it's their 4th or 5th visit, wouldn't they know what to say in order to get the next level of care?
I think it can really vary. I mean, I think that ultimately, like when safety is the question, it's like I'd rather be safe than not safe. And so if being safe means going to the ER, even though it's a tough place to be or I kind of can anticipate, I still, you know, especially I think for like parents, guardians, concerned friends that are like, if we don't do something, how do we know that like we're okay? You know, it kind of puts the onus on them to determine, which is so hard. So just like, I'd rather go and kind of go through the process. But ultimately, like there's so many people that are familiar or have therapists or have been through these systems before, and yet still I think they're kind of at a loss, or maybe the people supporting them are like, I know you say that you're good, but like, we got to make sure that we have another set of eyes on you to be sure. And I feel like that's usually how it happens. Not always, you know, but.
I mean, I had a crossover. Like when Holley first told me about SHFT, I had an experience in college where a person that I knew then, who I was in close proximity to, had a mental health crisis. And we took them to the hospital. And they were seen we waited for a long time in the waiting room. They were seen at the hospital. And I remember at that time, I didn't know what a good outcome looked like. I knew that I didn't feel safe, that I didn't feel safe for this person, that other people didn't feel safe. But when people started talking about like inpatient, like, you know, somebody being held for, I started to freak out. Like that felt like more, I needed to know that this person was going to be like safe and okay. But the thought that I would be like committing them to like having to go someplace and be there for a time, like I didn't feel like, that felt like a lot. And I don't know, when you talked about it originally, that was of course the situation that I thought of was just this in between where he.
But what if a physician or a social worker explained the process to you?
I wasn't, because it was a friend. You know, they were sort of in the room, in the mix of it while we kind of waited. We weren't really there when they were being seen. We just sort of walked in and were there at the beginning, and then we sort of received them at the end and like went back home. But I didn't walk away from that thinking like, wow, this is a really great infrastructure for like helping this person who's like having a mental health crisis. You know, everything worked out okay, but we ended up having to go to the school and to get sort of support from that direction, because what I felt like we had gotten from the hospital visit was really just intervention in the moment. There was a moment that was happening. We needed that moment to change. We achieved that by going and getting this kind of care, but it didn't really change the overall dynamic. And like, that's some of what I hear you saying here, is that there's the ability to sort of attend to what's happening, but then there isn't a clear path. Can you share a little bit about how that knowledge impacted what you chose to build?
Yeah, I think that like people's ability to advocate for themselves is so important. And I think in healthcare, like literacy around that in general is really difficult to obtain from the people who know it best. You know, I think that like in my role when I was in the ER, I always felt like I had a real responsibility to help people understand like the ecosystem that exists, the one that they're in currently, the one that we're suggesting that they enter into, so that they're like equipped to navigate and make informed decisions and be able to say like, no, I'm not comfortable with that, or can I ask more? And I think, you know, part of that comes from being a woman and being a Black woman and having to learn that myself, even having, you know, worked in these spaces and had parents who worked in these spaces. Like still it takes so much, I don't know, is it like internal strength, like gumption, to be able to give voice to the things that you're experiencing, especially with power dynamics that happen. So I think that's a big part of what comes up for me, is like, how can we support people in being better equipped to make good decisions for themselves, or at least sit at those tables or in those conversations, being able to weigh in and really like share what makes the most sense for them. And that's a big part of like our goal with SHFT, is how can we support people in navigating systems, sharing resources, just giving a little bit more of like an inside look at what our treatment recommendations are, walking kind of alongside them as we're evaluating and making treatment recommendations. And I do think that a lot of that happens in these environments that we're talking about, but I think that the infrastructure of healthcare and of emergency departments is just so, it's a stressful place to be, you know, and even the most supportive providers, the most thoughtful and well-attuned providers are still operating within these broader systems that come with so many different challenging dynamics. It just makes it hard, I think, for somebody, even like the people that, you know, when you're talking about your experience, to like receive and be able to process that info, to be like, okay, I would do that differently next time. You're just kind of like trying to survive when you're super I don't know, hyper vigilant and hyper aware of like all the stuff that's happening in that space. I feel like that only kind of answered your question.
You know, when you're talking about it, it actually made me think of my birth doula. It made me think of the role of a doula, this like
Sherpa.
Like somebody who has the knowledge but isn't necessarily coming all the way from inside as the sole pillar of holding up that knowledge, so they're able to play in both worlds of like this is what I know, and also this is what you experience, and those things both will make the whole of whatever we move through together. Do you think that, I mean, it feels like there's some part of that feels hand in hand with like my experience with therapy practices, but do you, like, where does that disappear from like, how does that not?
Yeah, where's the gap in like awareness, I guess? Like, how can we be more front facing to the people that are looking for these services? I wonder if that's the gap, or if if there's an awareness there and there's friction. So I don't know if there's friction.
They don't know how to go in, or
I think a little bit of everything. I mean, I think a little bit of what maybe you were just saying of like, there are people that are doing this kind of work in these environments that do kind of, I don't even see it as like stepping outside of their role, but like lead with a little bit more of just like human to human, interpersonal, like the power of that to be able to say like, look, I know that I'm conveying these recommendations to you in like a very formal way, but like, here's actually the inside scoop. Let me break it down for you. This is the language I'm using. Like, this is why I'm making this recommendation. And it really like uses their, like the power of connection to build rapport and then send somebody out in a way where they feel like a little bit more prepared. But I think that, again, like the environment of these spaces doesn't really lend itself to taking that time and being deliberate.
Like if you're in an ER.
Yeah, like,
in the sense of like, there's just so many patients to see.
Yeah, and it's like there's beeping and there's people screaming and there's like really significant medical concerns that are happening, or you've like historically had very negative experiences in those environments, like somebody's ability to even hear or be open is just, I think it's a very complicated space to be in, and try to offer this care that, you know, outcomes are going to be better like emotionally if you can kind of like be present, you know, slow down a little bit. It's just like
that's just not what an ER is built for.
I guess in an ideal world, do you see a partnership with like first responders or the fire department to then bypass the ER to go to an outpatient center like that? I
mean, I would love that. You know, I think that if there can be just like a really thoughtful process behind knowing like who is and is not appropriate, and a lot of that is something that we are navigating, you know, to be able to manage needs that are pretty significant. You know, we've had people show up who are in imminent risk of harming themselves, and so what does it look like to do what we can do in that moment and then support them in getting where they need to go, which in some instances is to the ER still. You know, we are learning that like as we are seeing more and more people, but I do believe that like it just, I think the important, the sweet spot is like just being able to be with somebody when they're distressed so that you can kind of slow it down and talk them through like, this is why we're making this decision alongside you. And I know like in my experience as a person who's just like been a patient, I don't always feel like that step is there. You know, like, can we just like talk about this for a second? Do you have to print papers while we're still talking about, you know, while I'm like getting dressed? You're like telling me, and I don't know. I think it's there's probably a lot of factors there, but
I mean that's so loud to me. Like if your mental health stuff feels so intertwined with like processing, having to process your own feelings, have to process reality, and like having to speed any of that up or feel time pressure on any of that, feels like it would inherently get in the way. It's an interesting thing to have to take on the challenge of opening up a space that doesn't bring any of that.
What are there certain root causes that are universal amongst ages, or that you just see like themes that are repeating over and over again amongst patients in my head, it's like not feeling seen or validated or heard. And when we teach it to our students, we teach mirroring to help you establish rapport with these patients, because oftentimes they don't have a support system to hear them out on things. And when they finally have someone that treats them like a human being, you know, strategically it helps them calm down and be more cooperative. But if you genuinely treat them like a human being, like it's, you know, they're no longer just a schizophrenic or whatever. And so do you see that as a common theme of just like not having a social circle or support system that supports being validated or seen or heard? Yeah,
I mean, I think one thing, I love this question. I think that one thing that comes to mind is like, I think so often we're inclined, like myself included, to kind of like downplay our own stuff, you know, or lean really heavily on like, it could be worse, or, you know, I think perspective is really important also, but I think it's really easy to kind of diminish your own stuff when, like, especially right now, the world is like on fire. I don't know, it's like a dumpster fire outside. So I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of say like, it's not that bad. But I think that what happens in doing that is you deny, you know, your own, I don't know, need for connection, need for support, need for validation, to be able to say like, yeah, I mean, both of those things can be true. You know, you can be going through a tough time and like mask it really well and still show up to work or to a date or whatever and like go about your business. I think there is something powerful about being able to like zip yourself back up and go into the world. But what happens when you do that and there's not like an acknowledgement, an uncovering of the stuff that's actually happening, is it just kind of accumulates. And I think that, you know, a lot of what we're doing with Shift and just like in general is trying to do like suicide prevention on like the smallest, most micro scale by just acknowledging like life is really complicated and talking about stuff is like the easiest tool, the thing that we do every day. Like, how can we do that in a really normal way, you know?
So having the bandwidth to be more nuanced.
Yeah.
And dissect things.
Yeah, be more nuanced, be more patient, offer yourself grace of like, it's okay to have hard stuff going on. I mean, like, I've had a lot of hard stuff in my life, and I think that ultimately it's made me stronger, and it's been like really, really hard. But I think that not a whole lot of good comes from like denying that, you know. Ultimately it still will be there, and when it doesn't get addressed or acknowledged, I think that that's just when it becomes like a much more slippery slope.
Do you experience a connection between what you've had to move through in your own life and your interest and care for like other people as they navigate challenges in their lives? Do you think this was there before, or, you know, how did that sort of develop for you as a person?
I mean, I think like, I don't know, just in like knowing my own story, like I'll say some stuff.
Yeah, sure.
I love a little context. I mean, my parents died in 2010, and I think that definitely set me on a different path of like, I mean, definitely that feels like there are a lot of worse things that could happen in life, a lot of bad things, but that feels like a pretty bad thing to happen.
How old were you?
I was 23. They died 6 weeks apart from each other from cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Just like real tough.
How long did they have cancer for?
My dad had cancer. He had prostate cancer for a while, and it was more like chronic condition, and but like for years, you know, and would just go to like outpatient visits. But my mom was a practicing physician. She had some shoulder pain before like January 2010. You know, her range of motion was limited, but still going to work. And then she took a leave from work because it was just like unmanageable, and feels like a pretty concrete example of like doctors not being the best patients. Also, love you, Mom. No placing blame.
Being
but
stubborn?
Yeah, just being super
Holley,
stubborn.
I as from a paramedic, I had abdominal surgery 2 years ago because I thought it was something I could deal with on my own, and then you end up needing surgery.
Yeah, you're like, it's fine.
Quickly humbling.
I'll figure it. Yeah, and she got a full body. It was cancer. Yeah, she got full body scan at end of January, and she died mid-March. And then my dad died early May. So it was just kind of like, then my dog died in the middle of all that.
Oh,
so I think
so
like,
sad. Okay, when expectations are just being blown left and right.
Yeah, there's so much
I guess
stuff.
like when someone has cancer for that long, you would think their time is a little shorter than.
And then your mom goes first.
And the more sudden.
Yes. Yeah, it was like a whole scramble of like, and I was the only child. Just like a lot of
your whole
stuff.
life changed.
Early 20s,
my whole life
that's...
changed. Yeah, I was like post college, just trying to like live. You know,
just live. Yeah.
Go to the bars
for sure,
or whatever.
And now you're figuring out how to be like a one.
Yeah, like an executor of 2 estates, you know?
Oh,
so I think like that, I mean, that definitely like imploded a lot of what I knew. And I just, from that, I think had like endless compassion, knowing that everybody is navigating something, you know, like I still had to like wake up. I mean, I guess I didn't have to. I guess I chose to, honestly, but like to wake up and like show up to job things or doctor's appointments and like apply to grad school while having this whole history. But that's the same for everybody, right? I mean, a lot of people go through really, really incredible stuff and still like show up every day. So I think I took on that perspective more strongly of like, I don't know, life is complicated. You just don't know what people are going through, and it's so hard to like muscle up and keep going.
Yeah. And you know, I don't think we're born with a purpose per se, but but we always try to make sense of why the world is happening the way it's happening. And that's on a global scale to even like the familial scale. So like in that scale, like what was it in your head that told you to, like, that was pulling you towards getting out of bed? Was it because like no one else is going to do it?
That's such a good question. I don't know that I have that insight. Yeah, I think nobody else was going to do it. Maybe belief that it would get better, that it wouldn't be so bad. I mean, I think that probably the shock of it all was a help preserve, you know. I mean, it was definitely like a functional part of what was happening. Like, I don't know that I really came out of that fog of like what just happened for some time, where I was just kind of like in go mode. But there are very real things that I had to do. I can't imagine not, you know, just abandoning like having like my childhood home, you know, and like figuring out the mortgage and like all of these real life things that I had to show up for. But that's a great question, because I don't totally know how I went from that space into like today. I mean, I guess it's like resilience.
I guess you hear about it through what, like when people like do experience traumatic things like that, you just like they dive into their work deeper. So that's maybe like one aspect of it.
From what I know of your parents, which is just a bit, but I think that there's like a core through line that existed in them that exists in you, which is a belief in communal existence. It's like a belief in connection and care and others, that you live your life for you, but you also live in relationship and in collaboration and in care of something bigger. And
what is something that like a support system can do when someone is experiencing something as jarring as that? Like most people, I think, want to do something and they don't know what to do. You know, is it a text message? Is it showing up in person? Is it we recently just remembered my wife Justine, her oldest aunt on her dad's side just passed away on New Year's. And her dad was the one that performed CPR and things like that, and she died in her sleep. And when the word, you know, got out to the cousins and the family, like Justine, I think I'm rubbing off on Justine, because Justine's knee-jerk reaction was like, everyone was reconvening at the home to try to help out, and she was like, I don't think I can be of help at this point. Like, I think I would have more questions than answers. And her mom was like, she heard the disappointed tone over the phone, and so she ended up going, and she ended up cooking a meal, like a dinner for everyone, despite how crowded it was. And so that, I guess I think of that. It's just like, but like most people, I think you just still just like, how do you help someone in that when you are known to be their support system, but like it's so jarring that it's so sensitive.
Yeah, it's so funny that you asked that, because last fall I had my high school reunion, and the time, you know, when my parents died, I mean, I was living back in the DC area, and the people that knew me best at that time were like my childhood friends, my high school friends. And so when I went back for this reunion, it was kind of the first time after, I mean, they died, you know, 16 years ago now. So like kind of we were all in a different place. And it was so interesting to have these moments with them where they were we were all kind of reflecting on that time, because it was, I think, a time where it was everybody's first experience with death, and like they knew my parents, they'd been in my home. Like, I think, so just putting myself, you know, in their place was is not something that I'd really done, to be like, oh my gosh, like, are you guys okay? Like, I know I'm like, talk about what that was like.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, because they wanted to help, they didn't know how, and they kind of had to put a pause on that. And we're so
young, you know, it's like, you're 23, what do you know about what's going on and like what that looks like? But I think there's something about that where they just showed up however they were, and there wasn't too much thought behind it. And I think that maybe that made it, I mean, I experienced them as so supportive and loving and present, and just being like, you know, I had a bunch of friends move into my parents' house afterward, and we kind of like reclaimed it and had like a lot of parties, and it was really beautiful. I mean, I wouldn't change anything about it. And I think the joy that came back in, like following that, just made such a big difference. And I mean, my response would probably be just like showing up and being there. Like, you don't have to know. I mean, it's just such a tough situation. Like, you know, the ones that you're referencing, even like, I don't think that there's a right way, but I think just being.
You say something conversationally sometimes that I find really impactful, because it to me, the sentence is so like austere and like, but you offer it up so freely. You'll look at somebody and you'll say, I believe you. And you'll say it, I mean, it doesn't need to be something like big and heavy and hard. It's about but it's like, there's this quickness with which you like affirm other people's experience, which makes me think about what you said about being seen, like what the value is of being heard and being seen, and where that sort of fits for us. And
we're trying to do more of that in the EMT class. So like last fall, the most popular criticism was that I make myself unapproachable. So on the whiteboard by the front table, I used to publicize the number of retakes on each big hurdle, like an exam or a practical exam. So on exam 1, 30 people need to redo it because they got below 70%. On the first practical, 45. And it's just like, I was trying to motivate through fear. And
intentionally?
Yes. Yeah. Like, hey, you're behind. You need to catch up.
Yeah, like
we're here to help you catch up, but you need to catch up. Whereas now, because one of our instructors likes to encourage these students by saying, let them cook. I bought 7 golden spatulas. They're serving spatulas.
I saw them on the wall.
Yeah, that's what that is. And at the end of, we have 7 lab sessions. So at the end of every lab session, the previous holder can nominate someone that, for doing something that was like courageous or insightful, and you just pass the baton. But I think I'm noticing the effects of the positive reinforcement or the validation, because already we've had like maybe 2 students want some attention in debriefing like a stressful situation. Like they saw 2 cardiac arrests back to back at Northwestern. And in the ER, it's not normal to see that much death, and as a student maybe it could be your first time. And in one of the patients, she saw herself in that patient. So it was just like extra personal, and so it just took another 25 minutes. But my takeaway was their willingness to come talk to me. Is like I'm doing something better in the sense of like I'm making myself more approachable.
This shows up for me so much in parenting world. Like there's all these sentences like nothing said in harshness won't be heard better with loving firmness. Just trying to like sort of separate for myself what those 2 things are. And I think it's a hard thing as a person, because we have our own complicated range of feelings, and you want something for other people, or you want folks to be in a better spot, and there's so many different approaches. But I think it's I'm like grateful every time that I hear somebody say that. It affirms for me a thing that I want to believe about the world, which is that you can take the kind, generous, optimistic, believing people approach and get a good outcome. That good outcomes are not guaranteed no matter what you do, but that creating an open playing field can do a lot.
Yeah, it's I guess I'm thinking about like creating your own situations to where like shift like to the point where you're not rushed.
I mean, I think there's also like to what you're saying, there's a lot of like heaviness in leading with, I don't know, like a firm, tough approach. I mean, I think that a balance is important, but I think like that's also something that you are having to put out there. And I think that is just, I mean, I prefer, if I can, to take the path of least resistance, right? Of like, or being curious, about somebody and what is making it so that they're showing up in that way. Like, how can I just be open to the fact that like everybody is showing up with their own stuff, their own baggage, and like not as an excuse of like treating somebody poorly, but I do think that there's like an abundance of gray area where it's like, there's obviously a lot of stuff playing out right now, and maybe I can put myself in your shoes or put myself in my own shoes when I went through something tough, of like just kind of being present, being slow, being soft,
I guess I don't want to be the reason why someone leaves the class. People have left the class for a variety of reasons, whether it's like they don't have their basic necessities met, and I guess I just tell them we'll be here when you're ready, and that's unfortunate, and like similar to life, like this class like is on a time crunch, and it will move with or without you. And so it makes me think of like creating a situation where you have the bandwidth to take your time is optimal, is ideal.
It's special.
Yeah.
I think it's special because I think it fights against a lot of things that are built into how we function.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how is it being received? Like, you guys have been open for a little bit. Are you both from people maybe who are hearing about it but haven't engaged, and also from people who have engaged?
Yeah. One thing I'll say real quick, just to I think that one thing that we're seeing that's really cool is like the actual time spent with somebody in our environment versus like in an ER is not so different. So like it's interesting that, you know, like one of our like therapy sessions are 60 minutes, but our like crisis evaluation is 90 minutes. And, you know, I mean, there's several instances where I spent more than 90 minutes in an ER with somebody. So I do think it has a lot to do with like the relational environmental aspect of things versus just like the literal time spent, which is kind of a fun thing to call out, because I think it just speaks to all the different factors that make that
relational in the
different.
sense of like what you're wearing or the environment, or
I think a little bit of everything. Yeah, like just the sort of like culture that we're trying to build in the space, the actual physical environment, I think is like
couches versus waiting room chairs.
Yeah, it's just like not a sterile, you know, abrasive lighting. It has kind of like a cool non-clinical vibe to it. Yeah, I don't know. It just made me think of that I think that there's more happening in that time.
Yeah, it's not just time.
It's like the setup also. It's like how, I mean, I think it's like you meet somebody's humanity a little bit there. You know, you're sort of inviting somebody into a warm.
Well, that's almost reassuring. Is that like, like it's not the time.
Yes.
Like it took just as much time.
Right.
But it was the setting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, to that end, I think it's been really cool. I mean, it's being received really well. You know, like we have parents who come in who have said like, thank you for opening this space. Like we have gone through these processes and the environment, the staff, I think just like the acknowledgement that there's a thing that hasn't quite existed that we are now able to access, especially I think for families who have avoided, you know, going to the ER because of any number of reasons, or who've had really tough experiences, or I mean, anything in between there. And just people saying like there have been times where I wish that I could have had like a drop-in space that really normalized like talking about like normal everyday stuff, you know, but acknowledging that, yeah, that can still like be really hard and be stressful and be triggering. It's been cool. It's been very cool to see.
I feel like there could be a podcast space inside Shift.
I mean,
it's very vibey.
It is very vibey.
We talked like a little bit about identity stuff, but I think that you carry with you some personal identities that like make your perspective on the work that you do needed. You know, I'm wondering, being a Black woman, are you finding that there's a conversation about mental health that feels specific to kind of like how it feels to move through this world and this place? And you know, I know that like your leadership at Shift has been something that's been like noted and valued, but are you finding that there's like a conversation happening there for you? Yeah,
I mean, I think that even being visible as like, you know, a Black woman, a biracial woman who opened this space has just been, there have been a lot of people reaching out, like saying thank you, asking questions, saying that they've thought about, you know, exploring therapy or some version of it, but haven't for any number of reasons, which has just been like so moving, you know, to know that is a signal for people that like this is a safe space. And I think that there again are a lot of safe spaces that exist out there, but the sort of niche of like crisis or urgent support, I think what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing is that it really resonates with people as something that they've needed but hasn't quite existed. You know, in the last few weeks, we've had a handful of people drive up from like the south side, the far south side, you know, Black men driving up for care, which just like, I don't know, there's something just so special about that. You know, people who've said like, I've thought about this, I kind of want to dip my toe in, you know, I'm nervous. It's just so cool. It's so cool. I think knowing just like historically the role that segregation plays in Chicago and like resource deserts that exist, you know, on the south and west sides, to know that there would be something about what we're doing that people are responding to enough to drive up from wherever, like Inglewood, to seek care in River North because we're offering something, you know, that they feel like they need and would benefit from. Is just, I want like more of that. You know, I want to be able to answer to more of that because it's really, really important. It feels like an honor, honestly, you know, to be able to do something like that is just like the best thing.
I wonder if you asked, like, and if they responded, like what they saw or heard that was enough for them to drive up.
I don't know if I have an answer to that. I mean, I think, you know, most recently I put out like a post on TikTok that was just like my voice talking about being like a Black and female owned space. And I think even just inviting people into like the behind the scenes and like the reason for why we're doing this, I think is really disarming for people, is what I would imagine. And that, you know, what I feel very strongly about as we're like putting ourselves out there is, I don't know, I just want to be as real and normal. Like, it's just like me. I happen to be a clinician who opened this place, but I think really moving away from, I think, some of the tough like power dynamics that can happen in like healthcare and mental health care, being like as transparent and open as possible, I think just goes a long way. And I think that that's probably a little bit of what people are responding to, what I hope they'll continue to respond to.
I think just, so much of this world is built by the dominant, you know, I think that like the whiteness of it all is like so pervasive, and in the medical structure, I think that's like very apparent. I think that there's something about just knowing that there's different thinking, different conversations, different perspectives involved in the building, is valuable.
That's
anywhere.
Do you find like white providers becoming more sensitive to it, and are they holding their tongue now, or like they're more hesitant to say certain things, or has it affected them?
I don't totally know about that. I mean, I think that there is, you know, definitely when I'm thinking about things like, I don't know, the physical space, how we're building out like our assessments, what are the questions that we're asking, like who are the providers that we're hiring. I think that just being who I am, like my perspective on the world, my outlook, like my history, I'm going to make decisions that are in line with that I think are just going to tend to be more curious, more inclusive, more open in all the ways that like I have wanted and haven't been able to get, or have wanted and have been able to do and see like positive outcomes from. And so I think that, I don't know that I can speak for white providers, but I think that I can speak for having been like a Black patient entering predominantly white spaces, and like how hyper aware you are, or anticipating that like there are going to be some issues. I'm going to not have my voice heard. Like, is it going to be the same? Whatever. Even if it's not, you know, I think that it's hard to promise that. Yeah. The intention that has to come from receiving that and being open enough to say, like, you know what, you're totally right that you've had all that stuff show up, and we're going to work really hard to not do that. I think that there's something that can happen in a space when it is, you know, co-founded by somebody who looks like you, where we're just going to show up and do the stuff, you know.
Could a white provider be curious enough to develop that empathy, or does it come down to just race?
I think I mean, absolutely. You know, I think that it's always nice when you also have community of people who don't look like you, who can give like direct feedback on like, I know that you think that you're doing this thing. Also, it's maybe not totally landing in the way that you are hoping that it does. And like that sort of collaborative, really visible, transparent, like having those real conversations of, you know, I don't even know what the examples would be necessarily, but like, how can we really take a look at what we're doing and the ways in which it's having like a positive or maybe not so positive impact on people based on like XYZ reasons?
Yeah, I guess like what comes up for me is this, I just because I've watched you build and I know how much you are building a bit outside of a pre-existing structure. I think that opens up a lot of ability for you to like pave new paths and to like create systems that are built out of your perspective and a perspective that isn't maybe so classically accepted by the system. Are you finding that there's also disadvantages with building outside of that system?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard.
In the sense of like trying to become accepted by the establishment? Like as a collaborative partner?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that there's been a lot of like healthy skepticism, which we have, welcomed to try to poke holes in like what we're building. How do we do it well? What does like the highest quality and caliber of clinical care look like within this niche? How do we manage safety concerns outside of an ER? I mean, that's like a pretty big task. I mean, I think that it's a very possible task, and we've seen that over the past several months. But, you know, it's hard also to be able to see a gray area, or a gap rather, trust that like lived experience of seeing that and wanting to bring it to life is real enough to make it valuable, and then really having to convey that to people who might be skeptical, or just like the system has been moving in the way that it has forever. And so introducing something new is like, that's cool. Like, is it cool enough? Like, will it work? You know, like, I think I like the challenge, and it's really taxing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's taxing, I think, a little bit because there's so many people who are like, this is a no-brainer. Why does this not exist? And then the other side of that, when there is so much skepticism, you know, that friction, I think, is hard, you know, to navigate.
Yeah, I don't know why my algorithm's showing me this, but like I see a lot of like reels about calling out who your like true fans are, true supporters are, and you see all the lurkers, and then you see people like cheering you on in the DMs, and it's just like, why is there such a large discrepancy between the two that would pay attention to everything you're doing, and then the people that actually like, let me know how I can help. I
wish I knew the answer to that.
My impulse is just, I am immediately aware of how overwhelmed I feel as a person, just all the time. Just like there's so many things that I want to give more of myself to, that I want to show up to more fully, but choices have to be made. I think for me, a lot of times I'll make that choice when I hit resistance, and I'm like, is this worth the energy that it will take to push back, like through this point of resistance? I think it's exhausting. It's funny because in some ways what you're having to face to get this place going is what you're also trying to solve for in other people's experiences. Like, people would go in, try to get this support. It would exist in different structures, but it was sort of hard to walk the path. And then sometimes you would lose a certain amount of people who were trying to attend to themselves or get resources or whatever. And it's like, now you've built this thing, and now it's like on a bigger scale trying to get
that traction.
To get people like comfortable with walking.
It reminds, so this class, its first iteration was at UIC in 2012, and my partner and I were co-running this from 2016 to now, and we left in 2021. And working with the fire department now is probably been a thing for maybe 2 years, and so that entire time we almost had to prove ourselves to like be like, we're legitimate, like we're producing pretty high quality EMTs, and we would love to partner and perform ride-alongs and things like that. It wasn't real until maybe they needed, or there was a demand, or there was a shortage of people joining the fire department. And so having students be exposed to the fire department, creating win-win situations.
How did they already know about, did they come back to y'all and say, we have a shortage, we could really use it? Or did that word come?
It started with a chief who's now retired. And her boss told her to come check us out, see if we were legitimate. And sometimes that's all it takes. Is like,
I really feel like that's what it is, right? It's like
stakeholder.
The right person to see it and understand its value, and then cheerlead for it.
That's how the program became born to begin with, is like, we're a bunch of undergrad students wanting to provide EMS to UIC's campus. And it was one person who was a former firefighter EMT, and that saw the vision, and then that's all it took.
Yes. And
then under new leadership, life was hell. And it was so bad that we wanted to leave the university. And here we are, right? And so now, like, the stakeholders that we're looking for are like, how can we get to the next level? Maybe create a paramedic program or whatever. And so with that, like, when you want to come back to the establishment to increase your reach, it's just maybe identifying like potential. It's interesting, like gatekeepers that would like unlock the certain paths, but also the people that are in direct contact with your patients.
You need the right gatekeeper. Because it's like, there's this other world where things happen, where people just have enough name recognition or power, connections, or money, where they can sort of like vomit a thing into existence and have it be held up by a world. But it's like you sort of don't want those. You want the people who are in those spaces.
I would
you
take
want
both.
the chief. Yeah, you call it. Yeah, but I think like for sure, anybody. Just like it's very cool. You should see.
Yeah.
But I think that there's this feeling for me that's like the dream is that you find the people who both are in those spaces to support you, and also because of their connection to what they do, they really see the value in it.
Yeah, shared vision I think is so powerful, and I do think that it requires people to, I don't know if it's like an ego thing or like I think that like, I don't know, I think about you, Steph, like you've been so supportive, so celebratory, and I think that you have just a real grounding in your own experience, like a ability to kind of like see where you were and where you've gone, and also you're just like an incredible person. But I think that like I love you. So nice. It's true. I wouldn't just say that, but I do think that like your awareness of yourself and your own process has made it so much easier for you to be supportive of me. And I do think there is this power in that of like, I don't know. I feel like that's worth naming, both because like I really value you as a friend, but I think that that's like a through line that I see. Like when people have, you know, reached out or said like, this is really cool, like what can I do to support? There is like an embodiment, I think, of their own stuff that's happening or something. I don't know that I have the best language for it, but maybe it goes back to like, what is the saying or adage of like somebody else's success doesn't conflict with your own something. I don't really, you know, but I think that there is something about like you offering up support actually has nothing to do with your own success and process, but I don't know.
Truly generous.
Yeah. And I don't totally know, but I also think like we're trying to.
I think the risk you're taking is triggering. That's because I feel it too. I feel it too.
Yeah.
When I look at what you've built and I see how important it is and I see how much you care about it and sort of like the way that you approach it, that it's not, this isn't the business that you thought of after taking a business class. No diss on that business. I'm sure that business is great, but that this is born out of like a, in some ways, lifetime connection to empathy and care in an arena where we're not super practiced at it. And you've gone for it. You've taken some big risks. And I think that as somebody who loves you, I get that surfaces in me, my own anxieties about my business, about my success, about my future, that I can only imagine that if somebody hadn't already walked through the process of like watching a thing go through the growing journey, that it's hard. It's hard to be in, and it's also hard to want that for somebody, you know. It seems so obvious.
That's such a helpful perspective.
I think that's the beauty of like long form dialogue and podcasting is like you get to go to these depths with people that get it.
Yeah, and you're also so, I mean, you're like so thoughtful about the way that you communicate. But I mean, I think that that's like, the longer I'm in the world, the more that I'm just really appreciating people who are tuned this way with some sort of curiosity. And I'm like not maybe naturally this way. I feel like I've had to train myself to lead with curiosity. I've spent so much of my life like wanting to know and be right and feel the safety of those things. And I think it's in admiration of people who I saw be very together and warm and lovely and smart and also curious that I felt like I was sort of invited into just like loosening up the ego stuff a little bit. And then I meet people like both of you, and this is some of that through line where there's this like core, really earnest care.
I think admittedly, like the ego stuff it's easier to dissolve once you're in a secure spot.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Like when we walked in, I was like, I don't need to make money from this. Like, like what a very, you know, great position to be in. And like to me, it's like after getting married, and I said this recently, but she'll hate me for saying this. It's just like you feel like you hit a hurdle and you can almost stop trying, and you have to really embody and practice the saying of like, don't stop dating. And unfortunately, it's like if I'm like having a few things going on this week, like a date night would be the first thing to go, like, or the lack of a date night, you know. It's just so it's learning to reorganize priorities, but all to say, it's like I don't have to flex for anyone anymore. So like we were joking about how when we were still in our dating phase, like one of the first cars, like I bought an Audi. It's gone now. It's just like, but like, you know,
What watch were you wearing when you drove it?
Right.
Like what are the first,
the best one?
The importance of first impressions, right?
Yeah.
And how you dress and how you carry yourself, the people that you keep around you, it matters to a certain degree. And it took this whole thing, like I wouldn't be here without that stuff, without thinking about that stuff. But now it's like I can let go of a lot of that stuff, and now I have the bandwidth to be more generous, to be more curious, instead of thinking about myself all the time.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, but I think all that requires some amount of safety too, I think,
Yes.
to do anything. I mean, again, back to parent world, like that's the thing that talks, you know, all the time there. It's so much like nobody can hear you if they're too caught up in feeling ashamed, in trouble, scared, unheard. Yeah. And I think I'm finding that I didn't think that my adulthood would be more isolated. Like people always talk about how it's harder to make friends in adulthood. And I thought like, yeah, probably for you. You haven't seen how comfortable I am talking.
Right.
But it is harder, but it's not harder because humanity changes much. It's like harder because the weight of what I hold myself to, the weight of what I want from my life, it's like not as giant, but it's much closer. And it requires a kind of care, and reevaluation is what came up for me when you talked about like date night dropping or not dropping. Like there's some weeks where that can drop and that's okay, and then there's other weeks where it actually can't drop. It needs to be pushed up, and like that kind of having to reevaluate how to keep up my own ecosystem. It both gives me a kind of stability that I think allows me to do some of the work of thinking about where my ego sits, but it's also arduous and hard. And
does it have
constant.
to be?
I kind of like I love it, and it's still hard for me. So as somebody who loves it a lot, I do feel like there's something foundationally, maybe not hard, but definitely challenging. It functionally requires that you abandon something to look at it from another viewpoint. Like you have to drop things, and that's like so hard as a person to.
You're just like constantly sorting, you know, like assessing, reassessing.
Yeah, and like. These sort of micro changes. I feel like when I was younger, I would make these, all of a sudden I'd be like, my handwriting is going to be different. And I would like change the way that I wrote like those were the kinds of personality changes I was making. I'm going to be somebody who listens to this kind of, and I would just sort of reshape myself in that way. Now it feels like this kind of fine tuning that is held up mostly by what I built for myself, but it's also really held up by who I surround myself with. And that's what made me think about it, was just like, now for me, friendship in adulthood is actually bond. It's not about regularity. It's not about frequency. It's about like, are you moving in the same frequency arena that I am? Do you want to build in community? I think there's tons of gorgeous ways to build on your own, but I am particularly interested in talking to people who want to build in connection with others.
I gotta shout out my buddy Sam. We've only hung out maybe 5-6 times by now, but he just brings strangers together all with the common through line of food, and we're just fans of food. And by the end of the dinner, it could be like a 3-4 hour dinner.
You're best friends.
And how does that happen?
Yeah, everybody, your family. You're like on a group text message where you're updating people about stuff. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how many different group threads Sam has, because he creates one for every dinner.
Like
right?
every single dinner.
And every dinner's different, and it's just like how many group chats, side convos are we having? And I remember he saying he used to care about this a lot. It's frustrating when you become you're initiating all these dinners and you're the glue, and not many people are following through. And he expressed the appreciation and the gratitude of like finding people that say yes, but also not taking it personally when people say no. It's just like people have kids or they're just super exhausted from work or whatever. But the people that, and my wife says this too, it's like the people that show up, like, I don't know, be grateful for that too, and just like, you know, pay more attention to that.
And the perseverance, you know, I think that just like whether it's dinners or parenting stuff or anything else, I feel like that really is.
Yeah.
And
so
special.
like I think of that because there was no friction there. It's just like, hey, you want to get duck at Sunwall? Like, yeah, let's get.
Like,
Definitely.
definitely.
Never said no to that.
Right.
Yeah,
That's a trick question.
It could be 2 a.m.
What do you want me to bring?
I could be asleep in bed. You could ask me that question. I would be dressed so fast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Picking me up
that's
first.
What I mean.
But.
It's like, why does it sometimes, like, does it have to be that hard? Like, sometimes it's like, you know, and he brings his daughter Ellie everywhere.
Yeah.
And so like he makes it work.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I guess for me, what maybe like, yeah, I think you're right. I think hard implies this sort of like weight, like a cumbersome weight. I think it's like ideas of like challenge. Like I think I look at that. Recently I switched. We were talking about like being, discipline in my house. We were talking about the idea of discipline. And I was like, the word is wrong. The word for me is wrong because I love the idea. I think the idea is so valuable, but the word is missing something. It's like something's being put on you. And then we landed on dedication or on ideas of like reverence for something, like to sort of devotion. Devotion was the word that we landed on.
Does that like provide a direction to it, or?
Well, I think it shifted.
tone.
I think
It
it
needs a
shifted it
tone.
tonally, and I think you're calling me out on a tonal shift. It's not that it's hard; it's that it requires a lot, and that you can participate. You can choose to do something like have dinners and bring your kid everywhere, and it's just going to take an energy input, and he's in some room putting that energy into those plans. And, I think that for me is the through line. Like, yeah, I do think about it as hard because I think often I experience those things as really hard, and I watch other people and it looks really hard. But I think, the reality is just like, damn, I see your energy.
Yeah.
And I think it always requires some amount of that. I think
Yeah, well, he now has a reputation of like, of like hosting great dinners and this feeling of like, I'm going to meet someone interesting or fun or on the same wavelength tonight. And so you're more inclined to say yes. And I think we've talked about it in the sense of like, there's probably a quantity limit, like past 10, you can't get meaningful FaceTime with everyone.
Yeah.
So, 6 to 7 is probably like an upper limit of that. And
it's like a science experiment. Like he's doing a science experiment.
Yeah.
The time and
Total social
dedication
experiment,
to like plan these dinners, and then also the time of leaving the dinner and mentally evaluating whatever happened at that table to figure out what choices you're going to make next time.
I'm sure there's a science to it, but there's very much so an art to it.
Yeah, and
Yes.
it's like it all
Yes.
exists in this sort of soup of somebody's brain. And I think that for me is what I'm talking about. Maybe not hard, but I want to be like around and watching people who create things from their mind soup. You
Yes.
know? Like,
I
that's
agree.
what I
agree.
Yeah.
I think I have to get over the hurdle of this doesn't have to be a one and done, because when I start thinking about these, I'm like, well, I don't want to be exclusive either. So it's just like, it's so hard to pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
But-
who can come to dinner? Oh,
Yeah.
don't even get
Oh
me
my
started.
God.
I had a birthday recently and I had a full mental breakdown because I just don't make plans with anybody. I can make plans with one single person, but as soon as I start adding another person, I'm like, but you
because
and this no person. Yeah, I can't do it.
And guess what? It was a great dinner.
Yes, it was a great dinner, but there was also a group text message. But it was like the only time that I literally wrote in my journal about it. I was like, ooh, I actually
Yeah.
Did a
sat
thing.
down at a table with people who I like invited to be at the table. But it's very hard. It was see, there I go saying the word again. It took an incredible amount of effort
And, like, mental energy
to just figure out like who would be nice to sit with. There's so many wonderful things that I think maybe in some ways what I enjoy most about somebody else who has that sort of mental soup available is that I don't need to do the work and I can be a beneficiary of the labor that they've done. Like, I don't have the capacity to build a space like SHFT, but I was a student at SAIC who went through my own share of
Stuff.
hard college age, like figuring out how to live by myself. I really could have used something.
Road trip?
Yeah. Oh, I did one of those.
Yeah.
It
Did it
solved
fix
a
it?
couple of
I
the
was about to
problems.
say.
Yeah. I probably came back with like more things to talk about, but
I love it.
Yeah, I think like there's just watching. I love being the beneficiary of somebody else's the area where they cook, because I think I can grab like a little bit more from somebody else's. I said the other day, I love being around people that are smarter than me, and somebody was like, "Oh, but you know so much," and I was like, "Yeah, but I feel like everybody's smarter than me because I know what's in my circle." And you know what's in your circle, and there's a 0% chance that our circles match up 100%. So there's like always something to
That's
be
like where the
learned
magic
from
is.
Yeah, that's where the magic is. And I think when I find somebody who's particularly driven towards something or excited by something or thinking on something a lot, that feels like
That's intoxicating.
oh
Yes.
yeah, it's like reading a book on a subject that I don't know anything about, but I know I'm gonna enjoy the book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you, so the patients that come into SHFT, like they've done some amount of like self-inquiry to the point where they have identified something they want to talk about.
Yeah, for the most part, or just like a curiosity or knowing that they need something. like we've had people come in and say like, I have struggled for a while, or my sleep has been really tough, or I had this thing that happened. And we kind of take on the privilege and, challenge of helping figure out what they would benefit from, what kind of therapy, what kind of conversation, what sort of back and forth is going to like offer relief or offer resolution or whatever the case is.
How would you define, I have this guy in my head, I've never met him, his name is Naval Ravikant, he's an angel investor, and he's boiled down like a lot of like life themes to 3 decisions that people often don't take enough time to think about. So the 3 decisions are like where we are, so like your location, who you associate yourself with or surround yourself with, and then what you end up doing. So where do you live, what do you do, and who do you do it with? And if you can get these 3 decisions right, they end up exponentially compounding. So like, yeah, you don't have a choice as far as where you're born into or the culture you're born into, but as you grow up, you have some say in that. And how much time do you put into like thinking about your natural gifts, your joys, and leveraging that, like going all in on that? And then how much do you think about, life partners or the friends that you end up keeping? And so when you get these 3 decisions correctly, life tends to work out. And then he's also defined anxiety as things that are either not diagnosed, but you can't like unlabeled. And it's gotten to the point where there's too many of them that haven't been attended to, and that's spilling over.
Yeah.
So that, which is different from stress. Like stress is like you know what you need to do, and maybe they're just not being done. And so I've had like students have just breakout panic attacks in the middle of an exam, and I think it's easy for me to say that they just didn't put the time in, and it's coming up now. It's like a reality is setting in. What is a more empathetic approach or compassionate approach to helping someone after they've calmed down from the panic attack, like navigate that?
I think just acknowledging what you saw them go through, to be like that. I mean, I feel like I say all the time, like, to you or other friends, like, you're doing great, or that sounds tough. And I think that, like, I mean those things when I say it, and that, like, maybe I don't understand, like, what it is that you're going through, and I haven't been there, but just based on what you're describing or the sense I'm getting from you, like, that seemed like that was really hard, and I'm sorry that was really hard, And I think
that's when you say, I believe you. I think that's when you, like if somebody says, like if I say, I just feel like I had such an exhausting day and I feel like I haven't slept all week, I'll just be like, yeah, I believe you. That sounds really heavy. And it's like crazy how being seen like that, just immediately, it's like all of a sudden that weight is shared.
And I think it like, absolves somebody from having to explain more. It's just like, clearly there's something happening, and I'm here with you, and that can be enough. Also, I'm happy to talk about it, but we don't have to. And I think that approaching with that openness and like acknowledgement of, I don't know that I can understand, but like I actually don't have to understand to be like available and supportive. It's like those 2 things don't necessarily have to be taking place together.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm very logic brained, and it's easy to try to just black and white everything, and
or want to solve it. I mean, I think like wanting to
to
solve is really.
The question that I usually ask myself is like, if I feel safe and good in my bones and my body, I can get anything wrong and not have like an emotional reaction to it. So like in what situations does it make me feel unsafe, really like panic attack level? Like I must feel like it's not okay to not know the answers, or I must feel like it's not okay, like something about that. And that's probably not about anything that's happened in that room with you. That probably has to do with their experience of not doing well or not showing up prepared or whatever it is. Like everybody's bringing something into the room that's from every other room that they've been in. And that's you've taught me a lot about just like, my own awareness of the fact that it's not necessarily a product of this moment can sometimes like relieve me from feeling like I need to step in.
And it's I think about this a lot. It's like, is there anything I could have said or showed on day 1 of class to mitigate those things from happening? And I wonder if there's any other solution, but I've come to the conclusion that some of these things have to be lived and learned.
And even just like, I think giving permission and acknowledging that stuff is going to happen, like naming the things and saying like, yeah, you're probably, the frequency with which somebody has a panic attack or needs to step out and take a breath or gets worked up, like that's super normal. So if that happens, just like do what you need to do to take care of yourself and come back when you're ready. Or, I think like leaving the door open for the weird stuff to come up. And I think acknowledging that on the front end, like if I'm thinking about any time where I've had to give, like recommendations or hopefully, supportively coax somebody in a direction, it's like, as long as there can be sort of heads up and like a collaborative moment where you can say like, yeah, it's like really stressful to learn a new thing. That's like a lot of my self-talk is like, I've actually never been like a co-founder and chief clinical officer before. Spoiler alert. But it's so hard. And so I just try to like be compassionate and give myself grace and know like it's going to be hard. Like, of course it's going to be hard.
I think one of the hardest things in my adulthood is like, and some of this I learned from parenting, is like learning what an appropriate response is, because sometimes it sounds brutal. Like sometimes an appropriate response is to like look at somebody that fell and be like, you fell. And it's like not my job to be like, you fell, you're okay. Or you fell, you're hurt, what do you need? Like, I don't know, learning a lot about what I am responsible for and what I'm not responsible for. And I feel like I watch you model that through the way that you engage with people. And I think that feels really loud to me. Like, I think it's such a thoughtful question to think like, how can I create an environment that's best for everybody? And also, I don't believe that there's anything that you can say to like prevent another person. I just don't. I think their emotional reaction is going to be
more compassionate when it happens,
or just like it's lovely. There's endless benefit to being thoughtful about how to set up a space where people learn best, or how to set up. Like I think that you could be awarded the award for best classroom environment, and there's still stuff to learn and grow. And then also there's going to be people that walk into that room and just engage with it in a way that you could never see coming. That's like
can't anticipate that.
It's not yours to. It's like caring, but without making it a responsibility. Totally, is what I'm trying to learn.
Sure.
I say this as somebody who is actively trying to learn it. So
right in this moment,
catch me on a good day, catch me on a bad day.
Holley, what was the impetus to go to business school?
Oh man, I would say like 80% gut intuition, honestly. I think I was hitting like a little bit of a ceiling creatively, like in the environments I was working in, where at one point I learned that I was the lowest paid person on my team despite having been there the longest, and I think that really required me to like reassess like my investment, my commitment to that space. I think was like a big piece of that, just like more broadly. And then I think I just knew that I wanted to like do something a little different. Like how can I move through this world as a social worker who just was, I don't know. I didn't know what that meant. When I went back to school, I definitely didn't have like shift or really any part of it in my mind. It was like, I want to learn more about something different. I want to put myself in an environment where there's a lot of newness happening, and that was definitely what was going on. And just trusting that, like, I don't know, I have this like itch, so I think I'm just gonna like apply and see what happens.
Yeah, no, because most people go because they're lined up for a promotion at work, and I
wasn't.
Similarly, like I was curious too. Like I was maybe 4 classes away from getting my MBA, but I went because it was free schooling when I worked at UIC at the time, and I found I was on like a 6-year track because I would just take 1 or 2 classes every semester. And to the point where like students that you start with are gone and they're finishing, and then that was around the time we made the decision to leave UIC, and like it wasn't worth paying into it anymore. But I don't think I learned as much in the classroom, unfortunately, and a lot of it's just like from doing it out here.
I would agree.
And so I wonder like if you had any insight into the next iteration of Holley or any future projects within that program. Because I'm sure, there are nuances amongst programs, whether it's, UFC, Booth, or Cal or UIC.
Ooh, I don't really know about a next iteration. I know for me, I was curious about challenging myself. I was curious about being able to sit at tables and in rooms and speak the same language, I think, in a way that generally is not really a part of the like social work training or clinical journey. You know, there's not a whole lot, at least in my experience when I went to school, there wasn't a whole lot of like the business side of things. And I think actually that those two things, like social work and business, there's a lot, you know, I had a lot of questions from like amazing friends and colleagues of like, you know, like, isn't getting an MBA kind of like the opposite thing of social working? And I was kind of like, I don't think it has to be. I mean, I think that if you can be in those spaces and speak the language, you're actually in a position to hopefully make a different kind of change, because inside. You can like, F stuff up from just the inside, you know? Yeah. And so I think that's the part that really interested me. I mean, I do think that right now what I'm doing, it feels like the real MBA, you know, because I sat in the classes and did the stuff, but now, you know, live trying to kind of like build a thing from nothing is definitely just like the application of everything.
It's actually so comforting. I think all the time about how I should probably go to business school. So there's something like really interesting about hearing you both say that there's like maybe more valuable education in the doing.
It depends on what you're trying to get out of it, I think.
I think I experienced the same language thing, like this feeling of there's like a way that we talk about
and
stuff that would
are
be
you
nice
are you not getting that by collaborating with the artists and vendors that come and go through good things?
We make up our own language. Yeah.
Isn't that enough though?
It's gorgeous. I'm thrilled. I like feel so grateful. And also as somebody who's really curious, I'm aware that there's like best practices. And if I'm doing things like I think like I would recommend somebody else do them, I'm understanding what the best practices and then choosing to do things my own way. Sometimes I just feel like not knowing.
It's akin to like staging versus going to
I feel like sometimes I might be reinventing the wheel. Like there might be a thing out there that I'm like sitting here struggling with that if I had taken a single class on.
I think that exposure is really, I mean, I think that having like a foundational understanding of the things that I'm doing definitely has set me, you know, has props me up to be able to address things in a more informed way, definitely. But I do think that like, I mean, I spent a lot of my time at Kellogg feeling like a black sheep, you know, like as a non-traditional student, as a clinician. I mean, pretty quickly I had to adjust to being like, I actually don't know what that acronym means. Can you like say that again a few times, you know? And like that was the ultimate, I think, exercise in humility.
We're most like, already in business.
Just like broadly. I mean, I met maybe a few physicians and a couple psychologists, but you know, a lot of people coming from more traditional pathways, and there's so many unknowns. And I was just kind of like, I hope that I don't get a phone call from the dean being like, Holley, we've really loved having you, but we see how you're doing in accounting. And, you know, like I had this, I don't know, idea of what, I mean, that didn't happen, but still I think it's hard to like enter an environment with so much newness, like so much vulnerability to be like, okay, I'm just going to like grip really tight and show up.
Do you think that there could be like a 1-year business education? Like, do you think that it could be consolidated down a lot? Is there like an expedited?
It depends on the officialness of it, because other people have like created their own. Like Seth Godin had his own like MBA program, you know. But like, are you going to get the 3 letters after? No, not necessarily.
I mean, there's executive MBAs, so you could go for like an accelerated.
Just like have this feeling that there's some, because I think I also watch the way that both of you move, and I don't necessarily know this has anything to do with the MBA, but I think that you both approach what you do with a kind of professionalism. Like a loose professionalism.
I think a lot of that comes from experience, to me at least.
Yeah, just doing stuff.
I think you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for the perspective. I mean, I try to, for sure. I just, every now and then we make up a rule and I'm like, this is wild that I've been given this much leeway with anything at all. Can I ask this shift question? The question that you asked was about Holley. I'm wondering, like, sort of similarly, what's the like dream vision for Shift? Like, let's say the thing catches, people hear about it, they get the word, and now it's what it is. What does that look like?
What does that look like? I mean, I think that, you know, I would like for us to have a presence, a household name in a way that's like the most trusted, safest, to really normalize, like I said, like just being able to go to a place for advice, and that being like the new norm. Like I've been saying, I'm trying to start like a cultural revolution where like people it's super normal to be like, yeah, like I have a session in a half hour to like shoot some shit and then like go back into the world, and
I'll meet you at 5 for a drink. I have a 4:30 chat at
yes,
shift.
yeah, like super, super normal, because that is what it can be. You know, like I really believe that it can be that easy. And I think that if we're able to kind of like catch some of the early, I mean, I would say like signs and symptoms, but just like inklings of like, I don't feel great. Like I'm really sad. I'm like really anxious. I mean, my personal belief is I think everybody manages some degree of like anxiety and depression. It's just life is complicated and hard. And I think that if we can lean into more of that sort of just like a little pep talk, you know, it's definitely, I think, saved my life like time and time again. And so I think there's a lot of power in that. And also building a space that feels like equal parts, you know, like, you know, I mean, we're a private company, so like private company, but like collaborative community space, you know, and what we're trying to do is bring in, you know, artists to hang their art or host different like speaking events and make it really feel like and be like a place where anybody can be, all are welcome, you know, like I think there's a pathway to getting there that we're trying to learn, but have it feel as much like a community-based organization as possible, because I think that community is just like essential in like healing and, you know, connection and
And that'll probably have its own, like every neighborhood will have a different vibe to it.
Totally.
If there was a shift like center in every neighborhood. Wow.
I like the thought of, I think about the times that like because when you were describing it, I was like, oh, sort of like the peak moments of friend groups kind of feel that way. Like you sort of land in a situation where all your friends kind of live close and there's like a house where you tend to hang out in the backyard, or, you know, you'll sort of catch these moments where it like, but that in my life, there are these times where things get destabilized for whatever reason, friends move, jobs change, life changes. And when all of a sudden I can't identify like where that yard is or where that spot is. And the thought that I could like go somewhere that
just like walk in.
That just existed and sort of like it was its own ecosystem.
So then the awareness is there. Once the awareness is there, is cost a hurdle?
I mean, cost is always a hurdle, you know, and that's something that I definitely have top of mind. You know, I don't know how to make everything free. That's definitely on my to-do list. But I mean, we're working hard as far as like we're in network with insurance, and we offer sliding scale and sliding scale rates. And honestly, a big part of what I love that we offer is like we have an index of probably close to like 1,000 different resources in the community. And so, you know, we have people who come in or call and say like, I'm looking for this. And we're like, that's great. We can connect you with showing up as kind of like a hub. Connecting different resources is also feels really important to me, is leaning into like the advocacy piece of things, like how can we support people in getting where they need to be or want to be, or helping them identify that. And if we don't have resources on our list, like how can we make sure that we add that to our list? And I think that probably comes back to like showing up in more of a community oriented way where, you know, yes, it's fee for service, and also there's plenty of supports and services outside of that we have more than the bandwidth to be able to offer. And I feel really proud of that, because I think it just is really important, you know, that people know that they can call or show up and say like, hey, can you like help with a thing?
Did you explore like the nonprofit side first?
We did a little bit. You know, I think that, and certainly in light of like, again, like the world the way it is, I think being grant funded would just be, or largely grant funded or, you know, donation based. I think we really wanted to be able to put together like the space and the clinical components.
You can always transition.
And you know, we have honestly had conversations about like what would it look like to have like a nonprofit arm. I think that all iterations of that like sound really appealing to figure out like how can we be
easier to get started as a for-profit model.
It was.
Same for the class.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I guess like when people become aware of these services, like I wonder if there's enough friction for them to not even reach out then, if they feel like they can't afford it.
I would imagine so. I mean, I think just like with anything, I think, you know, cost or just like expecting that will be a barrier. You know, anytime like we put something out there, we try to put as many caveats of like, whatever the barrier is, like we are, happy to support outside of that. And I think, does that...
There's ambiguity there.
Yeah, ambiguity there.
Yeah, that's hard. We're all business owners. And if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't have insurance. In fact, when I was hospitalized, I didn't have insurance. I owe them like multiple, like $26,000.
Yeah, that's so real.
Okay.
That's all of it, I think. All of it.
But the crazy thing is that that's 75% off already.
Yeah.
So that's the discount they give to uninsured individuals. And I guess if I didn't buy a home, I would probably be able to pay that. But I bought a home.
Yeah,
so it's like...
Those should not be...
Well, yeah, what a trade-off.
That shouldn't be the question
yes.
that you're posed with. Do I pay off my life-saving surgery, or do I buy a home that I live in?
Yes.
That's a really tough... Yeah. Man, we're in such a wild spot. I think...
it shouldn't be like that.
I think the thing that... I think like sometimes an open invite is hard because given all options, the human brain kind of freezes. But I think in situations where it's like, but I just don't know this world at all. Like, I think what's so cool, because I did call when Holley, I was curious about the services and I was tired of asking Holley. So I just called. I called and then they asked me my name and I was like, it's Steph. And they're like, and last name? And I was like, Crim, I kind of know Holley, but like, it's just like no big deal. But what I was really struck by was how open the initial conversation was. It was just like a receptionist. It felt like calling any place and them just being like, hey, like, what can I help you with? And I had specific questions about, they do EMDR and I'd been curious about that stuff and was just sort of asking questions about it. But she was anticipating some of my things. She was like, well, if you're interested, I'll put a note here that you're looking for that kind of practitioner. And, if you fill out this stuff online, you can also call back up and I can like check your insurance to make sure. Like she was just really, it felt like I could have called up and just been like, hey, I'm having a problem. And they would have figured out a way to get me through the conversation to land on something.
Yeah.
I knew a little bit more of what I was asking about, but like not a ton.
We just got to eliminate friction to the point where they call.
Yeah, which I mean, for a lot of people is the friction.
Yeah.
But I think that idea that it's a choose your own adventure kind of situation. Like you're opening up your only job is to open it up, and you'll just have to make kind of one decision at a time, and it's not like the whole.
It's not on you.
Do
it.
There's like
one thing I will say that I'm finding that I don't know that I'm really surprised that I enjoy it, but in like figuring out how to use social media just to like connect with people and take more of a like direct to consumer client approach, I really have enjoyed like people asking very candid questions on, like when posting something. And being able to respond like as myself in real time, I just think that maybe it cuts down a little bit on that friction because it's like you don't actually have to go to the business, to the website, to like email a thing.
There's a time and place for being as direct as you are, and then it'll grow so big that you maybe might not have the bandwidth one day.
And what are you? Is it Holley _
Shift, SHFT.
But Holley, how do you spell it?
HOLLEY.
Yeah, not too many EYs.
Shift, yeah. I say it because the Shift Instagram has a lot more information about it, but Holly's been posting more conversational stuff from her.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in, I mean, my business has really benefited from an online community getting excited about it. And I think what was so loud for me about that was my roadblock was like trying to explain a thing that nobody had seen and people sort of having mental images that weren't in line with what I was trying to make or not being able to pull a mental image. And I found that like being able to sort of toss it to the ether of the internet and have it land where it landed, I found the people who got it.
This is like pre-AI too.
Yeah. We have to say that now, don't we? Pre-AI. Oh, that's so interesting. Yes, but it was like there were people, sort of early adopters who saw it and jumped on board. And I think it's been cool to watch Holley do the scary thing of like being very loud and in front of a camera talking about the thing you care about. And I'm excited for you because I think that there's so much good feeling that comes with having people that you don't know say, oh, I really see the value in that, totally disconnected from you, who are just sort of observing what you built, and they can say like, oh, I could use that. And that's such a nice part of the internet. I
appreciate that. I mean, you're such an inspiration. I think just the way you show up like so authentically, and that comes across, and like the person that I see, in front of me and when we're hanging out, just like as people you know, listening to music like on my roof or something like that. And then the person I see like on your social media, of course it is like a curated space, but I think like so much of you comes through in that. And I think it just makes such a big difference.
I like haven't been doing it recently because I just like can't deal.
Being congruent.
Yes.
Yeah. I think like,
and like real and believable and like,
but everything. I mean, like I think it's so hard. I mean, I've fallen in love through meeting you with long form because there's like one of the frustrations early on was people wanted to talk about the success of Good Things Vending, but what I was proudest of was how I responded and navigated the failures. But like, that's only an interesting story if you're painting a long narrative. It's not people want to be like, how does it feel running a whole thing? You know, like they want to jump in right at there, but it's like how it actually feels is like, I struggle and then I learn something. Then I figure something out. Then for 2 days, maybe I don't struggle. Then I go back to my street, you know, and I think that there's something about social media that because it's shorter, it's just harder.
It rewards the highlights.
Yeah, and like nuance is hard in a short area, and controversy is really successful.
It rewards, so it rewards the highlights and then it rewards the downfalls.
Yeah,
so like when a restaurant shutters, it's like, oh no, my favorite restaurant.
Right,
it's like, where were you like before? Like,
and right, when was it your favorite? We haven't seen it in a while.
Totally, and controversy and correction is the other thing. Like the amount of, as soon as I had one video pop off, I got all these other videos that were like, you want to go viral on the internet, here's what you got to do, which was a fascinating peek inside of what everybody's consuming. But it was like, if you want to post a video, take a sip of water and call it orange juice and like just wait to see people, and literally it is, it's like
rage baiting people.
Yes. But there's now that's sort of integrating into the way that we talk about things, and I think for me that's the volume of the internet, but it isn't the individual of the internet. That's like how you get something to move in this multi-million people scale, but you don't need that.
When you know that, like, do you choose to play the game in order for them to invite them into the space, and then they find out
I don't know that I know enough yet. You know, I mean,
you know, when you like, these are the different hooks I gotta do to.
She's been going
keep
real earnest.
Yeah.
She's been just
super
like,
earnest.
She's been just
hey
like,
guys,
look what I've been working really hard on. Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I could use more of that. I mean, not really, but.
I mean, the video where you went around and you asked people if they were in therapy or if that was interesting. I think that was an example of like being a little bit more like internet ready. That was sort of like a format that the internet enjoys.
Yeah.
Many people answering a question. I mean, I think it's sort of yet to be.
That could
determined.
Totally be a thing. I mean, I think people love those like meet cutes in like the NYC and like those like quick walk up interview.
Yes,
and, like,
real world.
And some of them go as deeper than you think. Like
Totally.
one of my favorites recently is finding two friends, lifelong friends, and one of them supporting her through a cancer.
I saw that one.
We know.
Meet Cute. It was on Meet Cute.
And the picture of them with their children from like 30 years before.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's so good.
And the emotions that they both just like let pour out of themselves on that
Yes.
street.
And that whole series is amazing.
Yeah.
The bloopers are really great, but the ones where you're like, oh, that's so good.
It's really lovely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all you need, and the friction for, as now the creator is like, what's the quality gonna be like? And like, so these like, you know, microphones are cheap, and you can attach it to your phone, and microphone.
Now you're live.
Now you just gotta be there.
Yes.
I think
and do it.
The thing is, it's like a whole job. That's a whole job.
Yes.
Social media is a whole job, and if you're gonna do it well and care about it and want to communicate about it, it's like so interesting. I feel like this is a conversation that I would love to ask of a lot of people who built a small business, because I think that there is this way that it's so hard to be in the small now, and that like if I could go back and do it over again, I think I would do what you were doing. I tried to be so thoughtful and considerate about what I put out. But people were asking all these questions, and I wish that I had just thrown answers at the wall, you know? And I could go back and do it, but I think in some ways, like sacrificing an overall coherence or like a vibe for just real-time, transparent, person-to-person communication, I think you don't maybe have the giant thing go viral. I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I think maybe that's what you're not playing the game of, like, can I get a but the 17 people who interact with your video are like local people who are interested and might actually show up, and like that for me is loud. Like, we don't know how to use the internet locally super well. Yeah, I feel like we know how to like look for stuff, but local community
Yes,
is like,
connection.
it gets sort of lost in like global community or like something. But
Yeah, that's hard.
you don't need to be as
So
good
you're saying you don't need to play the game. You don't need to fall into that trap.
I don't think you
or,
need
or
to.
our values are like they're not in the right spot.
I think if you're a product-based business, there's a lot more benefit to
Okay.
playing that game. Because if you are dealing with a national or global audience, then that has
it
a direct
depends.
turnaround.
It depends
But
on
if
that
your
clip.
shift,
Is it like people wanting people to come through the doors, or is it just gaining an overall awareness about mental health? Like it's
Yeah.
different.
I think probably both.
yeah, probably both.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think like locality matters a little bit in this setting because it's like
Can you,
it's like
can you imagine
great.
people around the world recommending Shift?
That sounds cool.
That's the dream.
I mean, yeah.
That's the dream. I mean, I dream of like a world where like my kid grows up and he's off living his life and he calls and says that he has a friend that's having a hard time and it's like in the bucket of recommendations that I can make. Like,
Okay.
Like super normal.
you know, call your other friend and if it feels like it's above your capacity, call Shift. You know?
Yeah. Was it hard to pick a location in the city?
You know, at first I felt very strongly that I wanted to have like a ground level like retail space, you know, envisioning it just like your medical or urgent care space. We quickly realized that that's very expensive as far as like price per square footage. But, you know, we got some really great feedback early on that I was a lot resistant to in the beginning of like, I don't know how that will be received, like being able to or being required to walk in on ground level to a space that's kind of like promoting as a mental health urgent care. Like, I don't know if we're quite there yet. Do we need a little bit more discretion, a little bit more privacy?
Interesting.
Which was really helpful because I was like, I don't know if it matters. Like, we're doing this thing. It's going to be really cool. But I think it was a good temperature check of like where people are and what it would require of them to opt into something that's that visible. You know, and now we're on like in like a lofted space. It's on the 5th floor, so it's definitely visible, but not in the same way. And I do think that it offers just a little bit more security.
Privacy security.
Yeah.
It makes me think of the vending machines or the availability of Narcan around the city. And from our perspective, it's like I think the perception has switched. It's not as negative as once perceived, and the understanding of opioid overdoses can be purely accidental is becoming more widespread and more understanding.
Yeah, that's good.
I wonder if that'll change. I'm sure it'll change one day. That with the
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I think it's at least
it's changing.
I think that it is already, and I think an example of that is one of your opening questions about just the difference that I feel from young people. There's such a quick readiness to like incorporate even mental health language into casual conversation.
Totally.
That I think that has to represent what will be a continuing change.
And like I think also just the day that we're in, like I think that there's such a hunger for that earnest kind of like openness. I mean, just like the way the world looks and sounds if you turn on the TV, I think people really are wanting that connection, wanting to be able to say openly, like, I'm struggling with this thing. Can anybody recommend XYZ? You know, I feel like culturally, you know, we're going through a sort of like a renewal or rebirth of.
Yeah. How can we? I'm sure you guys have seen the recent like teen takeovers downtown. Like, how is there like this component of feeling seen in those teen takeovers, like amongst each other, to the point where like, oh, we're taking over this area of the city, like we're doing this big thing.
I really empathize with that stuff. Like,
or is there no rhyme and reason to it?
I think there's so much rhyme and so much reason. And I'm not saying that I think that it's like something that I support or good, but I also think like, well, that's an action of power. That's an action of taking power, of feeling powerful.
And look at the demonstration of power that's happening in the world. I mean, I think it's just like a reflection of the stuff that's happening, but I think it looks different or is easier to condemn, you know, if there are younger people who are doing things, if they're brown and black younger people who are doing things.
But I think it's like a natural response to feeling powerless is to seek out power, to find the area where you can have power.
And like rebel.
Yeah.
So what's the root cause? How do we give them opportunities to seize power or to feel seen and a part of something bigger than themselves, right?
I think it's like care. It's like real care. Like we actually have to care about.
Probably asking what they need.
Yeah.
Creating space that
I think
invites that.
I mean, my answer is like it's so bleak, but like I just think structurally it's not set up in a way that I don't know that we at this table we can put a lot into the world. We can put a lot into the world.
I think we can solve this in like the next 10
Should we just
minutes?
go for it? Should we just like really buckle down and like dive in?
You know, the comments are littered with like, oh, let's punish the parents. And like when parents, assuming that they have both parents around, and so I can't imagine how hard it is for, let's say, a single parent to work 3 jobs to make ends meet and not have the bandwidth to be a parent, and so their kids are off doing
This is also our favorite move. Our favorite move is to blame the individual.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong, it's operator errors. You know, it's like the go-to is just like you as an individual messed this up. But these are systemic issues.
Yeah, the exception, not the rule, for sure.
Like I think if you look at another group in another place, I would say like, is the difference between how these kids are responding and how these other kids are responding, is it the kids or is it their environments? Like what is the difference in their environments? Because I think very often,
and even how what's the story being told about
to
it,
them
you know?
about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
what
they
story
see
you
that,
hear
they
about
know
yourself.
that, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think I hope for a future that's a little unrecognizable for me. Like I hope for something that makes me feel uncomfortable. I hope for something that pushes on things that I thought I would have my whole life, because I think that those are the signs that we're like moving toward. It's a collective, you know, and I think.
Yeah, I wonder about that from time to time. It's like if there's ever going to be a thing to where you refuse to change your mind about.
I think about it all the time.
Do you?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, here's a little nugget. I read this I had a friend who's smarter than me who was sending me videos on something, and I ended up reading a little bit more about it. But just this idea that if we push back on some of these structures and I get what I want, we live in a more communal, respectful, non-lecherous, non-hierarchical, non-colonial society. My life would actually probably be worse. And there's like a lot to think about there.
Because
like,
you benefit from the structures that
hugely,
exist,
massively. I benefit personally. We benefit. Our country benefit. Like there are so many things that I enjoy that are a product of things that I don't support.
But in a way, you're in a position to change it from the inside?
I think for me, the thing to keep closest tabs on is actually my feelings. Like, do I feel threatened by you showing up in this room? Do I feel threatened by your idea? Do I feel threatened by your generosity? Am I worried that you're going to take something from me that I want to be mine? Like those are the things that I think keep us, you know, as you get smaller.
Fear, definitely fear.
I think anything that shrinks the world, that shrinks connection. I think an individual, like my life, as I move through my life, I can feel my life wanting to push me towards those ideas. I know more than I used to know. Feelings of knowing give me kind of a sense of feeling grounded or planted or whatever, you know, it's
having
like,
control, being safe.
And I don't. So I think I'm terrified. I'm terrified of moving into my life and not staying open to change, especially as change has sort of picked up its speed.
Totally.
But yeah, it's like so funny because I feel like it's one of the things that's really appreciated in our friendship, but often the question that I ask myself first is just like, have I explored the parts of this that are showing up from me before I start sort of evaluating the like you part of it? Like before I start thinking about those kids and what they're doing, have I checked in with like how I feel about it and why I feel that way?
But the depth that requires of somebody, the willingness, I think, to acknowledge that is really significant. And I don't think a lot of people have the insight or awareness to kind of like tiptoe closer. Maybe they do a little bit, but I think it is so triggering, you know, to have to reflect and then pause and be like, okay, I think there's actually a lot going on here.
I think if we were just like more brought up, more connected to our feelings, I think that's like just like an awareness of my own, that I bring something to everything. Like I'm never coming in neutral. I'm always walking in with whatever I have from that day,
because
from
like,
my life.
you're a person.
Yeah.
Right.
And that there is no like objective truth in the way that I feel like I was raised with this idea of like I think there's a lot of reality that we can ground ourselves in. But I think objectivity is tough because we're just all looking through our own eyes. Yeah, I think it's not easy, but I do think that when I hear people talk about pushing forward ideas in mental health, they feel directly hand in hand. Like the more that we work on our insides as individuals, the more that we raise children who understand that their own insides are theirs to reconcile and to take care of and to grow, that the less we lash out towards external things, because it's the blaming something else is like such a product
Response.
of comfort. Yeah, it's like I feel so destabilized that if I can look at you and make that your fault and then you're the problem, I can still be safe. And I think the more that people just like deal with their own stuff, I think it won't be as easy to blame other people.
Totally.
The more that I understand my own human condition, the harder it is to believe somebody else when they tell me something about other people. Somebody says, that's just a bad guy.
Yeah.
Well, I know what it's like to be a human, and I would be really, really surprised if somebody's whole identity had been brought down to bad guy. There's like a lot more there, and that doesn't change behavior and this, get into the weeds of it a little bit, but.
Yeah. How would you lead if we were in a session right now? Like, how would you lead us in a session?
Well, I guess it depends what it is. I think that when we are, like, if you are coming in for a crisis assessment, we really try to start with some like psychological first aid, just like being present with somebody, asking what brings them in, making sure that the actual physical environment is like conducive to somebody who might be distressed, like having tissues available or offering them any number of, spaces to sit or something to drink, just kind of like grounding them in the space. And then we definitely kick things off with a little bit of like a safety assessment of like, how are you feeling now that you're here? Do you have safety concerns for yourself or for the loved one who's bringing them in? Just like context, like tell me a little bit about what's going on today, and kind of easing into some more formal evaluation of like, what are the stressors? What sort of risks are we really talking about? Is there concern for self-harm? Are we having unsafe thoughts? Is this something that's been going on for a long time? Was there something that just happened like yesterday that you're kind of spiraling from? I'm like really big on context and just trying to get an understanding of like, how did we show up in this moment? How did you learn about us? Have you ever been evaluated for something like this before? Is this new to you? Kind of going from there usually.
Let's say it was a loss of a significant other and this is their first time.
Ooh. I mean, if somebody was coming in, even just for a chat, and I love the chats because it's really kind of like whatever somebody's showing up with, we just meet them there. So if it was something like that, I mean, probably even just acknowledging like, I'm really glad that you're here. Probably took you a little bit to get here. And again, like asking if they've done something like this before, taking kind of a temperature check on like how they're feeling now in this space, how it's been for them. I think treading a little bit closer, like cautiously to the actual event or the situation that you're describing of like, was this something that happened recently? Was it sudden? How have you been managing so far? And like, how's that working for you? I think I like being able to, and I think generally like a lot of clinicians, at least social workers, a lot of the training is in like looking at the person in their context and also acknowledging that like, for the most part, that person is the expert on themselves. And I think that leaning into those two things really make it so that that person can feel more grounded, can feel more involved in their own care. So it's not just like an expert person who's trying to, exactly, yeah.
I feel like I wish that was like on in every medical office. Like we might be the experts on medicine, but like you are the expert on yourself. Like it's so, I don't know why. I just feel like we're not, it took me a long time to realize that I could like advocate in those sorts of, like when you're talking to an expert, it just feels like, well, you're the expert.
Yes. Like tell me.
Yeah.
There's not always a whole lot of room, I think, for that. For like asking questions, asking like dumb questions, or like just trying to get your bearings before you're set off on this like pathway that you're like, I feel like this is a fast track to something and I don't totally know like the whys or, have that understanding, that shared understanding.
Yeah. I mean, I said my perspective as far as like where a lot of anxiety comes from those three things. But like for you, have you noticed or observed any common threads amongst the patients?
I think we see a lot of people who are just like navigating like life transitions, and whether that's like, adolescents going through, being autonomous and also not at all, or, young adults who have relocated for college and are all of a sudden kind of like in charge of themselves, but again, not really at all, but definitely with more autonomy than like an adolescent. I think that transition and the like instability in that can just be so hard to sit with and to navigate, and certainly to navigate if you're showing up with any number of like pre-existing life stress, just like everybody does. Yeah, and feel that instability, and then also not knowing really, like, we've seen a handful of people who will say, like, I'm afraid that if I say too much, like, a decision will be made, or like it'll be escalated to inpatient or to the emergency department. Like, can we just kind of talk about stuff before, you know, it goes a certain way? And I think that is super telling, because I think it just speaks to how often, I don't know, somebody feels out of control or doesn't, again, have that agency over themselves and what happens next. And I think that's also hard for, like, a clinician to hold space for, because you're like, I don't know, I'm hearing stuff and I really want to make sure that we're moving closer to something that's safer. But I do think that that's just telling for people's general experience of, like, is it okay if I just say a couple of things and we don't all react at the same time, you know?
Well, that in and of itself tells me there's a sense of stability right there, right? That's fair. And so are a lot of these conversations around self-inquiry and reassuring the amount of agency that they have and being discerning as far as what they want or don't want out of life?
Yeah, and I think just reassurance that, like, it makes sense that they would feel however they're feeling. You know, like, whatever a couple steps before that is, of, like, you know, what I say often is, like, if you described or identified, like, one of the things that you just listed to me as, like, a stressful thing, I would say, like, that sounds really hard. But you've listed, like, 4 things, and all of those are really hard. So however you're responding makes a whole lot of sense, just, like, normalizing in that moment. And again, that's, you know, a lot of what I try to do for myself, or, like, you know, whoever else I'm around, is like, yeah, of course it's hard. Of course you're not sleeping well. Of course you're crying every day. Like, you're going through a hard thing. You know, like, to expect something different, I would probably be more concerned, you know, when somebody is just able to kind of, like, keep powering through, but then can rattle off, like, 5, you know, very stressful, significant life changes. I mean, that's, like, big. That's important to pay attention to. I think, you know, culturally we value or give a lot of, like, praise to being able to kind of, like, power through and buckle up and not listen to yourself or not listen to signs that you're struggling. But, like, that is harmful. That is hard, you know, and I think that being open to that probably starts with, or open to something different probably starts with, just validating, like, of course you're freaking out. You just described something that is big, you know.
Yeah. What ends up happening then? Do they let something go?
Yeah, I think that it just kind of, like, loosens things up a little bit and kind of demonstrates or models that, like, it is a safe space to talk about it, and whatever you're going to show up with is definitely stuff that, like, we've heard before or we would expect, you know. And then I think it just lays, like, groundwork to move towards, like, a treatment recommendation or just, like, a next step that is actually going to be, like, very effective and useful for somebody, because it kind of strips away some of the, I don't know, feeling of, like, how somebody should be, you know, to be like, what's actually, like, most practical for your day-to-day life. I don't want to make recommendations for you if it's not going to be useful, you know, if you're actually, like, never going to go to that therapist because of past experiences or whatever the case may be. I think it just is more of a clean slate to be like, how can we actually make this work for you? Like, you're the most important person here. You're the one who has to go into your life and, like, you know, hopefully feel safe, and even beyond that, like, feel grounded and able to thrive and, you know, move forward.
I think I'm always shocked by how, like, somebody feeling seen makes impactful change. Like, I think there's this idea, and I talk about parenting world a lot, but I think I realize that there's these through lines where in parenting world it's talked about in such black and whites because they're, like, trying to educate people, but you're always a human. Like, the experience is always, there's sort of a really consistent through line between childhood and adulthood. And like, if my kid's freaking out about something, like a balloon popped, it's amazing how much saying, like, you're really disappointed that balloon popped. You loved that balloon. I don't need to say, I'm sorry that balloon popped. I don't need to say, we'll get you another balloon. I don't need to say...
We jump to, like, solutions.
Yeah, we try to offer up more than I think, like, is needed.
Okay.
I'm trying to learn that in my life. I'm trying to hear that in myself. But that's been really enforced by hearing Holley talk about how she does her work. Because I think that there's, like, so much of me is like, yeah, but then, like, what action do you take? Like, how do you fix it, or how do you move through it? And it's... I think so much happens in that, in just, like, a person who feels you're spiraling, you're drowning, you're scared, whatever. And then all of a sudden somebody's, like, making direct eye contact with you, and they're like, hey, I'm actually not freaked out by this at all. This is, like, what I do professionally. You're totally good. this all makes a lot of sense to me. We're here together. We're like, that makes a lot of sense. But I don't know. It just like I didn't like grow up learning that, or like I didn't know that intuitively.
Yeah, I don't know that I did either.
Did you learn that from school? Is that like part of the education?
I think school and probably just like what has worked for me, like with my tough stuff of like, I don't know, like death is so hard. And like you said, like it's hard to know what to do or what to say. And I think people just being like, watching them flounder, watching them be like, I hope that your parents, I wish that you, right. It's like, I don't know. Like, it's just, it's hard. It's really hard. Or honestly, like seeing people's reaction to what I, if we're talking about like my stuff and like what I've been through, I think it's helpful. It's a helpful mirror. It's been very grounding for me to be like, okay, yes, that was really hard. And if I can offer up that mirror, I think it just is, I'm able to like find myself more, and I think that people can find themselves more if you're able to like see through to what they're describing.
This podcast has been, it's a mirror for myself selfishly. So like getting to hear, let's say an entrepreneur's journey is like, that makes, I get that. And like it becomes a mirror. Is that kind of similar? Yeah.
And I think it just makes it really, it's just an invitation to be like disarming, to be like, let's just like talk about the hard stuff, and
yeah. And when you put it like that, I feel like there's less burnout because it's so, I don't know if casual is too casual of a word, but like casual in the sense of like, you don't take it home with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely helps to kind of contain it a little bit because you're just showing up kind of more real. There's less like performance. And I think that I think that you're definitely going into it, wanting to have those safe boundaries and like a game plan, a strategy as far as like the clinical assessment, but just like the human part of it, which I think is more than the majority, is just being present with somebody who's going through something. I just happen to be trained in a thing, and enjoy doing a thing that makes it easier to manage.
That right there is like, I think that's the definition of hospitality.
Yeah.
Right? A presence.
Yes.
Right? And no matter what your vessel is, but the attention or the eye contact and the listening is the art of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the safety of it, of like, you don't have to actually know. Like we know, because that's what we do, and we can help you find understanding or whatever that looks like, but you can just like show up with whatever mess you have going on.
I think that when you were first describing chats to me, I was like, is therapy allowed to work like that? Like, are you allowed to do therapy in that? Because it just felt almost like too casual for a doctor sort of relationship. Like it felt like I have to commit to more than that if I'm asking for your help. That there's like a through line here with how you show up. It sounds like how you describe the chats of like an opportunity to just have a conversation with somebody who happens to be trained to have those types of conversations, but is really just like a person who will see you and
be there.
I wonder how many people are leaning on AI to be their therapist.
So many.
Oh wow.
So many, I think.
Yeah. That's going to come back around.
Yeah, I think, my impression just based on what I've like read and seen is that it's so easy, to
is
just
it
be
leading
like
to solutions, or are they still having issues or episodes?
I think both. I think that it's definitely, it
just has none of the ethical boundary. It just has none of the, it is not actually participating in therapy. It is grabbing collective information and feeding something that it thinks should go next. It is not making,
and it does a pretty good convincing job of it, which
like
I
good
think
enough,
is good enough.
That it's, I don't know. I think,
but all for the better, right? Not all for the better, but like if someone is feeling better from a chat from AI, does that?
I think in its average use, but there's definitely been some really scary, like if you're turning to something to give you guidance, and then that thing is unrestrained in the way that it guides you, it could so easily guide you down your worst impulses, it could take the small seed of feeling isolated and throw you all the way down because it's following speech
and not have a
patterns.
stopping point,
no
not be able to say
point.
like, actually, this is out of my scope as a robot.
I'm sure there's people who've had like nice conversations. I think that we're going to go through a phase now where we try on AI for everything, and I'm just hoping that the turnaround for us realizing that it's not the best option is
like a rubber band,
a little
Yes.
shorter than the internet because
totally.
it's taken us a really long time to see the impact of the internet and to really understand what it's done to classrooms, what it's done to social dynamics, and I hope that it doesn't take 2 decades for us to figure out what AI is doing.
The demand and interest in third spaces is coming back. The analog is coming back.
Yeah, there's going to be. I have a strong feeling there's going to be a renaissance. I think about this a lot in the arts.
I agree.
Because obviously I do something that requires people to find art and artists valuable. But I think a lot about like the sort of uncanny experience of moving through an AI world, and my go-to joke has been like, it's going to be one day before AI can replicate a beautiful woman walking down the street. They can already do it, but AI will never be able to replicate like 2 totally weird, absolutely specific individuals in like frog costumes getting married under a bridge. You know what I mean? Like there's like a way that humanity can express itself that feels absolutely unreplicatable. And I think that a lot of that lives in creativity, lives in art, lives in connection, lives in communal spaces. And I think right now we're flirting with how much AI can replicate that for us. But at some point, we're going to get sick of it because it just can't really do it.
To the point where social media, it's unrecognizable.
Yeah, it's unrecognizable.
And
I think we're going to see the advertising. I think we're going to see handwriting. I think we're going to see lo-fi video footage. I think that we're going to see, I have friends who work in PR and they're getting these reports out that are like, looking for people with blemishes and looking for people who are like leaving the error, like leaving the misspeak in, and like I think that's the Renaissance. I think the Renaissance will be
appreciating the imperfections.
Yeah, we'll take
the blemishes.
We'll take this sort of perfected artificial world as far as we can, and then people will be like, oh wait, this didn't fix all my problems or feed my soul. Maybe,
or I'm hungry for the other stuff. And then I look forward to a time when there's a reinvestment.
Yes. One of our recent guests hosts album listening parties. So they'll run through the whole album, and they'll have talking points throughout the album. And it's hosted at Poor Souls in, I believe, Wicker.
Incredible.
But it's 2 guys that would just text each other in the group chat, like, this is the album they're listening to. And it spawned into, like, can we do this in real life? And open it up to the public.
I love it.
There's like life is an open world game. This has been the way that I've been thinking about it. Like recently, just trying to sort of be okay with the state of things. I've just been thinking like, this is my character. I'm in an open world game, and like, if I taught myself how to darn my socks last week, and the act of darning the holes in my
what is
it's
that?
a little. I got a speed weave.
Yeah.
I got a little speed weave where you like elastic band onto this wooden puck wherever the hole is, and you weave a little bit over the hole, and it's like a way of patching it. I felt like the main character of a movie, picking my threads. Like there was just something about,
I love it.
And I feel like when people say we have a listening party, we had a potluck. There's this, because we're in this new kind of world, there's a flavor now that starts to be associated with all these things that feel really hands-on and human and crunchy and yummy in that way. And I don't know, I hear people talk about stuff like that. I'm like, yeah,
more of
that is cool.
That is
You're
cool.
right about that.
Yes.
That was a cool idea, and you did it, and that was a cool thing to do. And like everybody who came probably had a really cool time. Because
and wants more of it.
that's not replicatable.
Well, I mean, how do you not necessarily replicate it, but like create or have like what ingredients do you need to do it in your own spaces then?
It's not replicatable via like AI.
I
think it's like
100%.
I think it's super. I think it's like
Yeah.
very replicatable, and but I think that the more that we invest in like online communities, it gets harder to remember to reserve some of that energy.
Or to see the value and to remember the value in it.
There's like a convenience to online communities that it's really inconvenient to come to somebody's place and listen to a whole album when you can like stream it on my phone while
doing
anything,
any other things.
anything.
Yeah.
But imagine like wanting to talk about it and have no one to talk about.
Story of my life.
With, right?
Yes, totally.
That's why I call Holley. We're going to start a text thread after this. The 3 of us are about to be on a group chat.
Yes, please.
That's hilarious.
I'm like, great. I think you can live a life where you don't feel that way. I think you can totally live a life where you don't feel that way. I'm not one of those people. And I'm like really okay with that because...
Well, how's your space? We haven't... when you were on, you were just getting the keys to that space.
Victor. It
looks really cool.
Yeah, it is a whatever building. It is like
it's a cool space.
It is, yeah. It is, the building itself feels like exactly what you picture when you picture a building that gets occupied by artists. And it has been like a profound freedom to create that space. Every other space that I've ever had has had a purpose that was either like necessary or determined by somebody else. So to have just like this room that was just for good things vended, but it's like so much more than that. You know, I think it becomes the room that I live half my life in. It becomes the room that I connect with my teammates in. It becomes the space where all the weird tchotchkes that like don't really belong in my house go to. And I feel incredibly grateful. I also am always aware of how much more I would like to be doing that I'm not, you know, for a lot of really valid reasons. That doesn't stop the wanting. And I have such a desire to like be bringing people into the space and to be together. But I think that right now I'm spending a lot of energy figuring out how to build a really solid foundation, like in myself, maybe even more than building my business.
More on the personal side.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think like building the business, you know, we talked about ego earlier, but I had wanted so much for so long that I just like really went for it, and it felt really good. And in a lot of ways it was like validating some things, but then it makes it really clear like what things aren't going to get solved by
doing
the thing, and left with those things and this business that I feel proud of and this kid that I'm obsessed with and a community that I'm really grateful for. Yeah, I just like I'm the center point to my experience of it. So if I'm not also spending time to iron out my own.
And so it's okay to just kind of become more of a hermit and focus on yourself and the people around you than continuing to show up publicly.
Yeah. I mean, like the idea of, is it okay? Some days it feels so okay. Some days it feels silly that for a second I would think that it's not okay. And then there's other days where like I get invited to talk on a panel and then immediately uninvited to talk on a panel about social media. And I immediately am like, well, I haven't posted in 2 months. It must be because I'm not attending to this space that I made. But, you know, like I said, life is an open world game. There are no rules. And the older I get, the clearer it is that, like, I have rules inside myself that are a product of my own existence, but that none of those are not changeable. Like, if I can if I can find a path, I can change any part of really my experience. So, yeah, trying to figure out how to feel really good about the business and good about being a parent and good about being a person and a partner and a community member, and not making any one of those things separate or larger, but to just sort of view it as like an integrated, I'm a person, you know, and like these are my outputs, but it all, the sturdier the foundation gets, the longer the arms can reach or something, you know. I think for me some of that has looked different than what I thought. I think it's like it's all moved slower, but in some ways that's what's been fun is like Holley's in the push. And I'm not in the push anymore. I could be if I wanted to be, but I've like chosen not to be in the push because the business is
the hustle.
Do
you feel, because I think about like, do you feel pulled or pushed?
I'm going to think about that for so long. Victor, I'm going to literally go to bed tonight being like, do I feel pulled or do I feel pushed?
Because I think about that a lot with the students. It's like, how do I create the circumstances to where they feel pulled to something? Because it's easier to be pulled coming from within rather than fear mongering and like pushing you to.
Wow, that's the shirt. That's the tag. That's
so good. Put it on a hat or something.
And I'm wearing the hat.
Yes, like every day. That's my new hat.
Yeah. What about that? Though?
I mean, I feel pulled towards the vision that I have for Shift. Like, I feel like I really believe that like this is important, you know, and like really deserves to have a space in like healthcare, in the mental health space. And I try to come back to that when I feel, you know, defeated or deterred, because the push is so challenging, you know, the push to, I don't know, figure out how to support my team and how to build more awareness around what we're doing and to try to build more stability for myself, like as a person and a single mom, you know. And so I think like the pull I find very, very motivating, very grounding, a really helpful reminder. I feel like the push can sometimes be so overwhelming, so disorienting, you know, to be like, yeah.
And it's so interesting because it's very much so a push. And so how do you, like, is there some of the motivational aspects of the pull that you can like borrow like into the push side to keep it going, you know?
Yeah, or like integrate the two. Sometimes I find, you know, that like majority of my daytime I spend in the push, where I'm just like hustling, you know, and I feel like I'm grinding. I feel like it's nonstop. Like if I carve out time for myself or a friend or something like that, that feels like a brief moment that I can come up for a sip of air, and then it's like right back to it. And then in the evenings when I slow down, you know, when our clinic closes, I feel like I have more of the pull where I can like ground myself, remember like I'm okay. You know, like I'm showing up the best that I can. But I think like figuring out more ways to integrate the two so that there's less of a delineation between like this is push time and then later is pull time. There's more of like a flow state is probably like.
You're in the hardest spot though.
Yeah.
Like you're in the spot. I think about it as like when you got to jumpstart a car, like it takes a decent amount of energy to get the car going. And I think that I didn't know this when I was building, but I'm definitely it's integrated now. The pull and the push are one thing. Like, I mean, there's definitely stuff I have to do that feels more like, but it's one task holds both. The large dream of the thing now exists in all of the like micro tasks.
Right. So like, I guess when I hear pull, I think big picture, and I think push, like doing things that taking you away from the original.
Yes.
You know,
totally.
Yes.
But I think like when you're at this stage where you have to go from nothing to something.
Yeah.
The
all
amount
of it is
that needs,
for the big picture.
Yeah, but it is also all like push energy because it is. You can think about the big conceptual, but at the end of the day, you have to make a building functional. You have to plan every single, and then that planning gets done and it's there and it exists, and then there's like a little bit less of the push. But I think that you're so deep in the push that I
Super
find
in it.
sometimes I have to say. But remember, Holley, it is not like it is this day-to-day work that you have to do.
Yeah.
And it is so important and so valuable that you're doing it. And it isn't the why. Like the why you're doing it is, but yeah, it's hard to remember. But I mean, do you experience that here?
Oh yeah. So like maybe 2 falls ago, like we got broken into. So it's like dealing with that. It could have been worse. It could, in the sense of like the person, they stole, they dismembered our mannequin and took a hoodie. They could have fallen backwards and cracked their head open.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
The other day, like our bathroom's leaking water, so I'm like putting buckets to pick up the water. 1 February, we don't have central air, so it gets really hot, and we left the window open, and it was like freezing out, so the pipes froze. And the Thanksgiving that I was hospitalized, the water heaters, like they also froze because I never opened them, and then so when it expanded and it broke the furnaces in the back area, so water's everywhere, and my business partner had to come and clean that up when I was in the hospital.
It's like so hard to be in a moment like that and be like, but I love what I'm doing. Like,
pull.
Yeah. That's the problem. Like you're knee deep in water in a basement.
You know where
and
it did
it's hard to,
intersected the other day when in the same week someone had a syncopal episode here after watching a pretty graphic video, and another student had a seizure.
Really?
And so like the other students got to see like
real time
EMT mode. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah, so there was definitely some intersection, but
Yeah.
all to say, like, yeah, you have to like remind yourself that like it's all for the big picture.
Yeah.
No matter, you never thought you'd be trying to blow heaters at the pipes to try to defrost them and things like that. It's like, yeah, you never think about
I think whenever people talk about stuff like this, my dad I grew up in a house where my dad would all the time be like the great runners and the great, well, he would like to like talk about people who accomplished a lot, who he viewed as being very successful and whatever, and sort of talk about how they spoke about their own success. And whenever I have conversations like this, I think about him, and I think about the role of like mantras. I think about those clips that they'll show of like runners before they take off for the race, where you can see them like run fast, you got this, dig, like you can see them sort of talking to themselves. I think that those are all these ways that we figured out to try and bring the pull into the part that feels like a
Yes.
push. Like when I wake up in the morning and I'm like, you can do this, you are capable, you have figured things out before, even though you don't know how you're going to figure this out. I'm excited to see how you do because you're the kind of person who solves problems. I say all that's they're lies. You know what I mean? Like I could say the opposite
delusional.
thing.
Right.
I'm totally just making it. I'm saying
That's
the
what you
thing.
have to do.
Yeah,
That's what you have
because
to
I
do,
think
yeah.
in order to survive the rest of it, I need to fill myself with that energy. But it's not
You have to dig deep.
always easy. There's definitely days where I wake up and I'm like, wow, look at my life. This is amazing. But on an average day, like, do I get up saying like, I'm really,
Yeah.
can imagine, I don't know, do you feel like there have been days where you've woken up and been like, oh, I'm doing it?
Yes.
Was there ever a day that you wished you went back to the ER life?
Yeah, I feel like I text stuff all the time. Like, should I get a job at like Starbucks? I don't know. Like, it's just so.
I can't imagine. So as a single parent, your insurance is top of mind, and as a business owner, it's like, why is it so expense for business
the
owners to have
stakes
health insurance?
feel so high. The stakes feel so high, and I think that if I could fast track to a place where they feel less high, or if I could like sub out and get a job. So, I don't know.
In a way,
I don't really want that, because I feel so connected to the work that I'm doing.
But you flirt with the idea of stability. You flirt with the idea of not having to muscle your dream into existence.
Yes.
I do it all the time. I flirt with the idea that I think about like getting a job at NASA or just like being a behavioral psychologist or just like, all the time. But I like in your conversations with people, have you found that there's people that really speak often, regularly, consistently, and are able to like hold that bigger dream image? Or do you find that there's this bouncing between or this struggle?
I think the latter.
Yeah.
The former. I mean.
The former.
Where
that there's people who do.
I don't know if they talk to themselves like that. They might. They just didn't say it on the pod. But I think people don't lose sight of the overall goal.
There's like
and
people
the
who are
overall
like
vision.
so locked in on it.
Yeah. And it's a mix of like curiosity and open-mindedness, like the willingness to objectively look at the fork in the road and be able to be decisive.
Yeah.
And not linger and not dwell on what could be and just make a decision and own that decision.
Yeah, I do. I see that around. I see that a lot in the world of building businesses. I sometimes wonder if that is one approach that tends to be a more patriarchal approach. And that there's, in fact, another option that can build something just they would have a different cadence. Can you elaborate?
What about it makes it a patriarchal approach?
I think that there's this idea of like growth, forward movement, eye on the goal. It's like a forward projection.
Okay.
And that when I hear people who are talking about the dream that they have, in that way, when they're like so locked in on it, that they often have this sort of hustle mentality, the productivity sort of energy, this idea of like my continued commitment to this will bring it into reality, and like my productivity is where there was this great conversation between a writer and the person who was interviewing them, and then he said, do you deal with writer's block? And the writer said, well, I don't believe in writer's block. And he said, so you're just always writing? And he said, no, but the other part of writing is thinking, and if I'm not writing, I'm
That's
thinking.
true.
So I'm always, and that to me,
What
it's
a
a
good
reframe.
reframe.
Yeah, that for me is a more like matriarchal reframe.
So I'm reframing. Okay, so the masculine versus the feminine energy of go versus like observing and waiting.
Yeah, or even think about the animal kingdom. Like when I talk about ideas, because I think patriarchy and matriarchy get really like politicized, but I think about it in like the animal kingdom.
I see. Okay.
Like you have like chimpanzees who are like warring and dominating for large population numbers and large territory, and then you have animals like the bonobos who are really, really similar, where they don't tend to stretch out, they don't tend to grow in numbers, but they live communally, they live just as long, they live just as rich, they've been around for just as long, but it tends to move slower, be about like sort of a fostering. And I think I hear in the business world there's this prevailing wisdom of like be decisive, make a lot of decisions quickly.
The title of the book is like Ready, Fire, Aim.
Yes, which I think is I think iterating in general is a great option. If you want to get really good at drawing a portrait, you're going to be better drawing 10 portraits than drawing one portrait for a week. Like, I do agree that there's really a lot of benefits to iterating. I don't necessarily agree as somebody who's built a business very slowly, who has talked a lot about stuff before I have turned it into reality. Nice. I don't necessarily believe that that is the only way. And I think that sometimes we can talk about the advantage of something without vilifying the opposite. And I think that you can be really decisive, and that can be a great way to build. I also think that you can whisper something into existence.
I so appreciate that. I'm coming up on a year of like a nonprofit. We have all the statuses. Everything's good to go, but I have nothing to show for it.
But you don't have nothing to show for it, because in 2 years, you're going to look back at this year as the most important year.
I hope so.
I believe so. I really believe, like when Holley's 10 years down the line and she tells the story of Shift, you know what year she's always going to include? This year.
Definitely.
She may not include year 4. Year 5 may not have anything notable, but year 1 always is going to get included, because there's just something inherently valuable in that. So like,
it's the beginning of everything.
I think that you can do the quick route, but I think for the folks who see people doing the quick route and think that their path doesn't necessarily point to success as much, I would push back on that and say that actually just sticking with something, I think, is the thing that differentiates. Like, it's commitment to the thing, and that you could turn it over any way you want. You could look at it from any side you want. But if you just are always picking it back up, it will become something else.
It's probably a mix of like the bandwidth each of the co-founders have for this nonprofit. So the short story is like, we're creating an ambulance company essentially.
Oh wow,
but we are helping, which is a bottleneck in and of itself with no funding, right? How do you buy a blank ambulance and then stock it? After that gets going, we'll have EMTs. I have EMTs in this room, like, that are willing to provide their time on a volunteer based, so, but the at the moment, it's like, how do you build a portfolio? And this, I guess, going back, the story of it is helping people not be limited by their illnesses or injuries to experience life moments. So that could be a wedding or
like
one last trip to the lake.
Somebody who can't come to oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That sounds...
And they have to miss out on a moment. Or what if a lifelong, and the Bulls and the Cubs, they do this all the time.
Here's why I think that urgency is bullshit here. Because, sorry, pardon my language, but like, I think that like, that has value. And that has value today and tomorrow, but that will also have value in a year or in 10. Like, if something just has that value,
that's enough.
Yeah, you can walk any path around it. And I get that we all come from a place of urgency because we want to see the thing come into life. And there's also this feeling that the world keeps moving around us. But like that's like you having eyes on something that like I had never thought about once. And then you say it and I'm immediately like, I can think of 10 million times that would be the go-to, right? It's the same way that I felt when you said, and that I think that we lose time and we lose support in ourselves when we hold ourselves to time-based expectations, unless that's helpful for you. But like, if you're not helped by a deadline, if you're not helped by setting hard concrete markers like that, can you move in time flows instead of timelines? Does it need to be that after year 1 I accomplish this, or can it be that 6 months after this thing happens, I would love to have shaped out this thing? Like, is that also a path forward?
It's definitely a path. Yeah, that's the path we're on right now.
I would probably imagine like you've already experienced that with doing this podcast, with building this space. I mean, it's like
8 years of the EMT program.
So like the EMT class has been going on for 14 and in total, and then I'm coming up on 10 years with teaching. And then I gave up wedding photography last year. So like I dabbled in it since the pandemic, and then worked closely with a wedding photographer for about 2 years and had a few of my own. But 2025 was the year, like I thought I could maximize my revenue by picking up weddings on the same days as classes, and the class would run itself and I could go shoot a wedding. And last year, it was the year I was like, my mind's here actually. And be at a wedding, and I don't need the money anymore. And I just and selfishly, we did it. I did it so I can help plan my own wedding. You meet all these vendors and all these venues, and you're like, I want to be here. I want to work with these vendors. But like after I got married, it's like I don't need that anymore.
And you were telling us earlier, when did you connect with the fire department here?
Probably a little over 2 years ago now.
2 years ago. And the program's been going on for 14 years?
Yeah, I know. It's a long time.
I think
amazing.
that matters. Like, I think those stories matter. I wish sometimes that we were as interested in those. We love them in some areas. Like, we love a musician that's been like singing in a subway his whole life and then get, like we love,
but
like,
you love it when
after,
he is the person.
So
If you don't love it.
God, that's what it is.
You don't pay them any attention when they're in the subway.
Yeah, you're so right. Oh my God, you're so right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like we want to know the end of the story. But like that's maybe some of my frustration is like I find that to be the most interesting part of the of the building.
Yes.
And the thing is like what
Like the trying, the getting there.
You saw that this would be a helpful partnership and had to move through all these different phases to get to a
At what point do you just stop showing, trying until they through the back door realize this could be a good partnership?
And you're trying other things, it's not like you stop, like you're redirecting.
I was about to
that
say, do you
energy.
stop trying? I feel like
I mean, similarly, after we left UIC, they stopped working with us, so we stopped sending our students there. Lurie's is another thing. Like I went there as a paramedic student, but we don't have our students there right now. But not having our students there, we go to UIC's OB center, but that only serves the students, and those experiences that they'll gain with a peds or an OB patient would just they would become a better provider, and then that's the effect we're having as educators now. Despite me personally no longer being on an ambulance, but that's how I kind of see that fulfillment.
But that's communal thinking to me. Like that's thinking about something as a whole system. It's like
the impact, shared impact.
I would have loved, and there's a little not controversy, but back and forth as far as how much value there is in this, but sending the students to OEMC, which is the office where the call takers take your phone call when you call 911, and getting to see the board that they're looking at.
Such
and
value.
How do they dispatch the ambulances and the squad cars to the parts
I'm
of the
an
city?
advocate in, I spent like a decade plus in hospitality. I'm a huge advocate for if you are going to work in a restaurant, you should spend at least half a day in every single position.
Absolutely.
Because I just think without understanding, how can we work together?
Right.
If you don't...
At
And everything is
back,
connected. Everything impacts.
Everything is connected.
Yes.
The older that I get, the louder my experience of everything being connected is. It's so
obvious.
Yeah, I couldn't feel it before, but now it's like, I feel like there's these through lines that wave, and I even feel like the tone of a conversation like this has this through line of we all are the kind of people who thought to do the thing in our head and to not stop when it was hard and to keep doing when it felt like it was failing, and I think, or whatever, but like to and then to let it change as time goes. And I think that
we're looking at a space I think near you. It's
that would be fun.
It's like near Leviton Lake.
Oh, cool.
But it's twice as big with 3 offices, so this could probably have its own studio space, but 5 times as much.
That's so real.
5 times as much. Okay.
Yeah, so we only pay $16.50 here.
Okay.
And we're eyeing close to 5 Gs over there.
Wow. Oh, that's so scary.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. It's we're in a position we're outgrowing
to grow into it.
Yeah.
But then
then the pressure that puts on to continue to perform.
There's good pressure, right? At least in my head, it's like
for sure.
Ideally, before we bought our home, I would have loved to get a mixed building similar to this, and put a class upstairs, but a coffee shop downstairs, and then a jiu-jitsu gym in the basement.
Oh my gosh!
And I would never leave.
Oh no!
But I think realistically, it's easier to just end up being in a strip mall with businesses that you admire and want to be partners with. I think if I wanted to go down that route, I'd have to rent out a restaurant space and then rent it out to a coffee shop or a bar.
Yep.
And then divide it up into classroom spaces with separate entrances and things like that. But there was one there was an old Parsons that gave up their space in Andersonville on Clark Street.
Familiar.
And and I was like, this is big enough for a class.
Really big.
Yeah. So it's just that's where my head is always at.
I flirt with stuff like that all the time. What would I joke about Good Things Landing, where there's an ATM cubby up front where how the ATM booth is always unlocked, so there would be 24-hour machines with a little camera in the front, but then it's just the front of a a space where we produce machines and sell local goods and whatever, but that's what you do in it. I think, I remember being in hospitality, and I used to talk to my friends who were in performance arts, and we would talk all the time about opening a community space that would have a stage and a coffee shop. I think
that sounds like the Magic Lounge.
Yeah, it's like the Magic Lounge. I love the Magic
There's a new one coming downtown.
Yes,
really?
The snake
hand
in
of
the eye.
The hand of the eye.
Yeah. Of a historic building. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah.
We must go.
Can we?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
I would
I'm
absolutely
very
lose my
down.
mind.
Yes.
I should say, though, I am socially inappropriate around magic. I will squeal.
That sounds great.
I went to Swift & Sons, and they had a close-up magician there who would come around to the
Okay.
tables, and I
That
have
sounds
never
magical.
been less enjoyed in a dining situation.
Oh my gosh.
I
It's
just
a treat.
lost.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got
lost
magic for my
gauge
birthday.
on what appropriate behavior was for. Yes, I know. More, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, what I know is that we all look, I'm doing like a sub, but because it makes me think about. I think I had a moment of feeling like grateful for being able to be in a room like this with you both, and then it makes me think about like what the whole point is, and I just feel like we live, we die. Whatever you believe happens afterwards, we all know that we are born, we live, and then we die. And I have some amount of control over what happens in the middle there. And I think that I would rather try really hard and fail miserably. I would rather like burn really bright and struggle than feel comfortable.
I'm like holding that so closely because I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of got to white knuckle it
White-knuckling.
right now. Yeah.
Sure.
seriously
Yeah.
white knuckling it.
But I gotta believe in it.
We probably know people that play it safe and that live comfortably, and I think it took a long time for me to just accept that.
Yeah.
Whereas for a long time, it's like, why aren't you squeezing
People are
all the
just
juice out of
different.
this life?
People are
And people are different.
As somebody with a dad who had a knack for just being okay, boggled me my whole life. But yeah, I do think people need different amounts, and like I think that instead of like looking at other people and wondering why they aren't burning so bright, or looking at myself and being like, oh my god, tune it down a little bit, like I'm just sort of like, cool, turns out I'm like a life eater, and like if you're not,
I like that.
teach me your ways, and like hopefully we can just like chill in a backyard without me having to fiddle with something for like 15 to 20 minutes. Like this is just who I am, and I feel really grateful to be finding community and camaraderie and people who are willing to live this way, because it's scary.
Yes.
And it can be really isolating.
Makes such a big
And
difference to be able to have people around you doing similar things.
We can't end the episode without talking about your co-founder, Jania.
Jenya.
How did your paths cross? Because you didn't take the program at the same time at Kellogg.
No, she was in school 10 years before I was, but this is her second company. She started a PHP IOP, partial hospitalization program back in 2020, so like a higher level of care than outpatient. And we kind of had overlapping circles by me being a clinician and referring, not knowing her, but referring to her program. And then she reached out to me on LinkedIn. She said, I'm curious about your background. I don't know that I've met many like LCSW MBAs, and we grabbed coffee and just kind of caught up, and we did a couple of small consulting projects together just to kind of see like how we grooved and what our interests were. And then we started brainstorming like if we could do a thing that would really have an impact and be innovative and creative, like what would that look like? And with my clinical background and interest in like crisis intervention, I mean, that was kind of a no-brainer for me. So yeah, she's great. We're kind of a nice yin and yang. We're very different and then have a lot of shared interests, and it works well. And I mean, I definitely wouldn't be able to do it without her.
Where was your head at post-school prior to the coffee date?
Her head?
Your head.
Ooh, I did like social impact consulting for a year. There's so much overlap in
Did you
like
leave
project
the
based.
clinical side already, or
I did both. I had 2 full-time jobs.
cool.
Like when I graduated, I was still working in the hospital, and then I had this consulting role. I think I was drawn to definitely drawn to social impact, socially impactful work, and then realized that it was just too far from the sort of impact that I wanted to have, that sort of direct service. And then when we started imagining what this could be, I ended up leaving the consulting job and stayed at the hospital while we built for a while. And then, we opened in November. So it was kind of a fast track. We met in 2023, got to it.
Yeah, I hear that like if knowing yourself and how fast you need to be gratified with your work and your productivity can as far as like, I guess within the healthcare realm of like, do you like seeing the impact of your work immediately, or do you prefer the scale? And so I guess I'm thinking of like politics and legislation with that. And I wonder if you feel like your hands are tied at some point because of certain legislation. I'm not thinking of anything specific.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
You know, I think I appreciate the idea of scale, because I think the feedback that we get in these pockets is so affirming that this is important work and that it would be of value to more people. So it's interesting how that plays out, because, you know, we do a lot of kind of like education around what we're doing, why it's valuable. And I think the other side of that coin is that it's like a sales pitch, right? But I think that instead of soliciting services, it's just wanting to get information out about this is a thing that hasn't existed, you know, and I know like the value that it can have for people and for families, and, you know, people just navigating like really hard things. And so I think imagining being able to scale it would just demonstrate like what a beautiful impact to have on people's lives, that they would be able to feel safe, you know, in times when they need it most. So I think I don't know that I can speak to the policy side of things, but I certainly, you know, really feel passionately about advocating for this sort of middle tier, middle between outpatient and, you know, the emergency department, in the same way that I think at one point didn't exist for the medical space, you know. And so if that can be embraced for mental health, I mean, that would be incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Is there anything we haven't touched on yet?
Probably, but this has been just very cool.
Because I feel like going back to the, you know, walking around the city asking people if they're in therapy, I feel like you two, I'd be happy to be on the camera, and I feel like you two would be great on like just, you know, double teaming.
I'm shameless.
Strangers.
26, I'm shameless. I will walk up to anybody.
Yes, please.
I love talking to people. I'd love to hear what they have to say. Yeah. No, I'm so down. I mean, I think for me, you know, I really appreciate you making space for us to come and talk about this. I think Holley and I have been talking a lot, and I've been seeing the work that she's been putting in, and I just feel really struck. You know, I had that experience where that one video for Good Things Vending got a lot of views, and then a lot of people saw it, and the way that changed, it didn't change my business. My business was the same, but the experience of talking about what I was doing immediately became easier, because there was this reference point that I had sort of created for myself to have a unified conversation. And I think that what I feel strongly is that there is not a single person that has not experienced a moment in their life or a moment in somebody else's life that they care about where a resource like this would have been available, if had been available, would have been helpful. Yeah. And because it doesn't exist, there's such a gap on understanding when to walk in. And that is the thing for me that I feel weight for you on, is just like trying to build a thing. How do you get that out? You know, I think what I would say, knowing that we're on a platform that potentially gets heard by other people, is to look it up, to look up SHFT and to see what they do, so that in a moment where you might need a resource or somebody else you care about might need a resource, that you just know what's available.
Yeah, sounds good. What's the official Instagram or other?
SHFT, SHFT _behavioral health, or my account is Holley, HOLLEY _SHFT, SHFT.
And then website?
SHFTBH.com.
Easy enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Check us out.
Guys, it doesn't have to be the first and last time.
I mean, I would talk to you literally anytime you want. I'm leaving and I'm starting the group text message thread.
Immediately.
What if it doesn't have to be a dinner party, but like how do you make this real without the mics, you know?
Yeah, it could be a dinner party. Just nobody else could be invited. It would just have to be, we would have to say that, you know what, because it's just like the boundaries of it.
Yeah. Because I think, obviously.
Yeah, but then I'm like, but then should Matt, you know what I mean?
That's the thing. So with the album listening party, they discourage +1s.
No +1s.
Oh.
Yeah, no +1s.
I really get that. I really get that. I think if you come with somebody, my birthday party of 7 people was all individual. Nobody came with somebody else, and I felt really good about it. I was like, yeah, that's right. Nobody. Yeah. You all have to talk to somebody.
Yeah, you got to
else.
make a friend.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the real answer is like just put it in the calendar far enough away that it becomes the thing that everything else shapes around.
Okay.
Definitely.
I'm like at that point in my life where like I can do anything.
Yes.
I can do anything, but I can't do it
If
next
it's not-
week.
yes, yeah.
Like I need to do it like
10 days.
I gotta,
Give me
yeah,
10 days
yeah,
at
yeah,
least.
yeah. 10,
Okay.
10 to 14 business days, and I can. No, I mean I'd love to. I also think it's getting warm, and I can feel everybody like wanting to leave. Their
even last
houses.
night. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I feel like ready for it and
Yeah.
excited for more of it.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was a wild winter, and I think just hard to
Be
a
inside.
barrage of constant, and then we're all in Chicago winter where we're like paying the tax for future summer.
Yes.
But here we go. It's the
Willing
good
it
part.
to come.
So I'm confident that we're going to see each other.
Yes.
Okay. I'll
would love that.
marinate on that. We'll brainstorm something, put something on the calendar.
That sounds
Cool.
great. Just you two, please.
Are you sure? Plus ones. I mean,
Justine is the invitation.
Justine,
You're the
I'm
plus one.
lying. Thanks for correcting me.
Yeah, careful with that.
No worries. No worries.
Little reminder. Right.
thanks guys for being here. Thanks guys
Oh
for
my
tuning
gosh.
in.
so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
We will catch
Really.
you next time.
Yes,
Cool.
can't wait. Thank you.
Awesome.